We then cut back to Neverwinter City, where Nightingale receives a report from the First Army about their mission to infiltrate the church and seize the Divine Judgment Stones. The report states that Silver City has lowered its drawbridge, and the armies are currently entering the church. Noticing how Sigil's transmission is heavily distorted, Roland deduces that this must be the maximum distance the communication sigil can operate without losing connection. If he wants direct communication with the north and east, he'll need to set up relay stations. But Nightingale reminds him that there aren't enough sigils for that. Only 4 pairs were ever made, and 2 of them are already in use for the current mission in Silver City. Besides, producing more isn't an option since capturing devils isn't exactly easy. As Roland tries to figure out a solution to their communication problem, Nightingale receives another transmission. The report confirms that there are no Divine Judgment Stones in the church. The place is completely empty. Even the basement has nothing. This leads Nightingale to suspect that the church might have fled, causing the prince immense disappointment. Suddenly, the sigil picks up another transmission, and it's lightning this time. She reports that the red mist beyond the snowy mountains has disappeared, or rather, it's currently dissipating. Roland finds it hard to believe, but lightning confirms it again. They're witnessing it with their own eyes, and Maggie is also a witness. Roland quickly warns them not to get any closer to the Devil's camp and to return immediately. Then, he instructs Nightingale to summon Agatha, as she might have an answer for this unusual behavior of devils. Unfortunately, Agatha has no explanation. The Alliance rarely had the chance to make contact with the Devil's inner camps, so she's never heard of anything like this happening before. In decades of war, she has never seen the Devil's retreat. With no immediate answers, Roland decides to keep an eye on the Devil's movements. 5 days pass, Roland receives a report from Lightning that the mist has completely disappeared. In this case, Nightingale suggests launching an investigation, and Roland agrees. Soon they gather the witches best suited for the mission. Before long, they arrive at the Devil's hideout. Agatha notes that this is the closest she has ever been to a devil camp in her lifetime. Lightning quickly reports their arrival at the location. The prince reminds them to stay cautious and retreat at the first sign of danger. As they walk through the Devil's Nest, they realize just how eerie the place looks, something they hadn't noticed when they flew over it in a balloon. Agatha can't determine the reason for the Devil's retreat, but it hasn't been long since they left. The towers haven't completely wilted yet. They've only darkened in color, and it'll take some time before they become brittle. This camp is nothing like the frontline camp the Alliance captured in her day. This suggests that the Devils weren't preparing for a retreat. Instead, their decision was sudden and unexpected. Agatha decides to venture deeper into the center, to the area where the multi-eyed devil was last seen. That's the only place where they might find any clues. As Lightning takes an extra step, the brittle ground beneath her crumbles, and she falls into a hole. But she quickly flies out of the pit. When they peek inside, they spot a devil lying at the bottom, and it looks long dead. Agatha starts piecing things together to figure out the situation. According to Sylvie, devils usually reside underground, which solidifies the evidence that everything happened very suddenly here. These devils couldn't have been waiting for new orders until death. Lightning suggests flying instead of walking to avoid falling into any more pits. As they take to the air, they discover a massive hole. While Lightning is looking forward to going deeper inside, Maggie and Agatha strongly protest against the idea of going inside, for obvious reasons. While exploring the area from above, they come across a towering wall of mountain stones blocking their path. Lotus steps up, using her powers to widen the path by moving the stones away. As they go further, they stumble upon a treasure trove of magic stones and other valuable items. Maggie takes on the task of transporting the goods back. Back in Neverwinter City, we return to Roland. He reflects on their mission. While Maggie has already taken a whole bunch of magic stones back home, Summer is currently working on deciphering what happened. Nightingale arrives with a letter in hand, addressed to Roland. Before we find out who sent the message, the scene transitions to the docks. There, laborers are working hard to rebuild the collapsed dock. According to Nana's report, 3 construction workers broke their legs in the accident. The prince takes full responsibility, admitting that the dock's design was flawed and promises that it won't happen again. However, that's not the main reason Roland is here. It's actually because Tilly has just arrived. The siblings shake hands and greet each other. Tilly reveals that she managed to bring Heidi with her, the leader of the Bloodfang. Roland is surprised and wonders if this means Tilly has resolved the internal conflict plaguing Sleeping Island. Tilly clarifies that while she has Heidi restrained, she hasn't yet revealed what happened to the witches who were rejected by Bloodfang, though she promised to explain everything once she meets with Roland. Tilly believes that Heidi sees Roland as her last hope. Since he is the ruler of Grey Castle and represents the elite, Heidi is banking on striking a deal with him to save her own life. She's hoping Roland will help her regain her position in Wolfheart. Later, we see Andrea reading that letter from her friends, Otto and Oro, who are in the Kingdom of Dawn. Andrea is a bit frustrated that Otto put both his life and Oro's on the line, but Ash is actually feeling grateful for both of them. It's all thanks to them that they now have intel on the church's movements ahead of time. Tilly asks if Roland has replied to Otto yet. Roland responds positively. He advised Otto not to be reckless. If the divine judgment stones are truly useless against pure witches, then mortals won't be able to restrain them. With the vast distance between Grey Castle and the Kingdom of Dawn, providing immediate aid would be impossible. The only smart move is for Prince Appin to keep his head down and act only after the church fully turns its attention toward Grey Castle. Andrea, knowing Otto's personality all too well, doubts he'll just sit idly by. But Roland assures her that Otto will listen. After all, Otto is a sucker for Andrea. And since Roland promised she would be safe in Neverwinter City even if they fought the church head-on, no one would be able to hurt her. Seeing Andrea die is the last thing Otto would ever want. Of course, Andrea gets annoyed, while Ash doesn't waste the opportunity to tease her about her supposed admirers doing everything they can to protect her. Tilly cuts through the banter, bringing them back to the main topic, how they plan to defend against the church. Roland initiates the discussion by revealing that after receiving the reports, he sent the First Army to stockpile supplies in Valleytown and clear out any church influence there. Hearing this, Tilly raises her concerns. With Roland's approach, the holy city of Hermes will easily detect Grey Castle's movements. And if that happens, her own plan to advance to Blizzard Town will also be exposed. Andrea shares the same thoughts. After all, they were supposed to mislead the church with false information. But unlike Nikocado Avocado, Roland is actually 2 steps ahead. With his approach, he won't have to guess where the church will attack from. If he knows the church's invasion route in advance, he can minimize civilian casualties. Not to mention, direct defense is what the First Army excels at. His only real problem now is figuring out how to deal with the pure witches. That's when Tilly places a reassuring hand on Roland's shoulder. This is exactly why she's here. She promises her brother that the witches of Sleeping Island will aid him in this battle. Later, Tilly enters her designated resting quarters. She notes how clean and elegant the place is, with no shortage of fresh snacks. As she looks around in awe, Ash casually asks why she called Roland brother today. After all, she used to insist that he wasn't the same person he once was. Tilly simply brushes it off, admitting that she still believes he isn't her stupid brother anymore. But at the end of the day, he's still her brother, just a smarter one. Besides, that's not what's important right now. Tilly wants to know if Ash has ever considered the significance of the war with the church. Of course, the not-so-intelligent Ash thinks it might just be revenge witches we'll finally be able to get. But Tilly corrects her, reminding her that what they're truly fighting for is a free life, not revenge. She then further asks Ash if she's ever thought about moving to Neverwinter City, living here with everyone instead of staying on Sleeping Island. Ash agrees that Neverwinter is great, and there's obviously a reason why the former Witch Association chose to serve under Roland. But she believes the witches from Sleeping Island are different. They already have a place to call home. Tilly then educates Ash on the 3 outcomes of the war she predicts. The first is that they won't be able to stop the Divine Punishment Army and may fall in the north. In that case, whether it's Sleeping Island or Neverwinter City, it won't matter. But Ash quickly shuts Tilly down, refusing to even consider dying. She promises that as long as she's here, she won't let Tilly die. Tilly tries to calm the overly dramatic Ash by reminding her that it was just a hypothetical scenario. She's confident she won't die in battle either. Anyway, Tilly proceeds to explain her second predicted outcome. If Roland fails but the witches of Sleeping Island survive, then if Grey Castle falls and Neverwinter is lost, the only safe place left for them will be Sleeping Island. She hopes they can keep resisting the church's advances from there until the Divine War arrives. In the third outcome, if the church falls and Roland takes over the holy city of Hermes, all witches will finally be able to escape oppression and prejudice, leading to true salvation. And when that day comes, the main reason for Sleeping Island's existence will disappear. You see, Sleeping Island was originally meant to be a sanctuary for witches. But if the church falls, there'll be no reason to hide on a cramped island in the middle of the ocean. Once the church is gone, witches will be able to live anywhere they want. No matter where they go, Ash is willing to stay by Tilly's side, ready to protect her. Later, we find Roland sipping tea, thinking about Tilly and why her mood toward him has drastically shifted. He asks Nightingale about it, but even she seems clueless. However, Nightingale has a hunch that Roland's quick decision to fight all out against the church might have something to do with it. It's just a guess, but Roland seems to believe this might be the true reason behind Tilly's change in attitude. But either way, he's happy that Sleeping Island has placed more faith in him. Later, Roland goes to meet Heidi, who's trapped in a cage. She had been knocked out before Nana treated her injuries to protect Nana from her. The other witches of Bloodfang reveal that Heidi tried to take Andrea hostage when she was surrounded, so Nightingale warns Roland to be cautious around her. He then orders Nightingale to wake her up. Nightingale promptly goes to the other side of the cage and wakes Heidi. Once she's awake, Roland introduces himself as Roland Wimbledon, King of Grey Castle. Since she wanted to speak to him, he's here. The first question he asks her is what happened to the witches who were rejected by Bloodfang. I already have a hunch that she might have handed them over to the church, and Roland seems to think the same. As far as he's concerned, Duke Island was under Duke Morgan's jurisdiction, and since Heidi was his heir, she should have cared for the handful of support witches she deemed as worthless. Even if their abilities were of no use, it would have been nothing more than providing them with food to keep them alive. Moreover, support witches are far more useful than she seems to understand. Of course, Heidi scoffs at the idea, which makes Roland chuckle. He wonders if she thinks he took the capital and became king solely by using combat witches. If combat witches were so powerful, they wouldn't have been oppressed and forced to live in hiding. So, he asks her again, where did those witches go? Heidi lies, claiming she released them and told them to find other witch organizations. She vaguely suggests that some went to neighboring towns or possibly to Dawn, but her lies don't go unnoticed by Nightingale. Roland feels disappointed in her, while Heidi continues to insist she's not lying. Roland responds by letting her know that Nightingale can detect the truth, so no lies can escape her abilities. Though Heidi isn't in a position to negotiate, she tries to strike a deal with Roland. She explains that the Wolfheart Kingdom has already been swallowed by the church, the king is missing, and she's the last of the Morgan bloodline. She promises that if Roland helps her take back Wolfheart, she will repay him in ways he can't even imagine. Money, jewels, witches, anything he wants. But Roland responds sharply, making it clear that he's only interested in knowing what happened to those witches. His complete disregard for her offer catches Heidi off guard. To think that a few witches are worth more to him than an entire kingdom is beyond her comprehension. Roland, on the other hand, has no interest in some distant land. All he wants is the truth. This back and forth is nothing more than an act of courtesy. He has plenty of other ways to make her talk. She must understand that avoiding the truth will only bring her pain. He emphasizes that he is a man of his word, so she'd better not take his warning lightly. Finally, Heidi speaks the truth, admitting that she handed the rejected witches over to aristocrats. While she didn't directly sell them, it was still a trade of sorts. Since not enough witches awakened on Duke Island to bolster their numbers, she needed to spread the word about Bloodfang across Wolfheart to attract more witches. Roland then questions her about the person who recruited the witches for her. Heidi mentions Skyflame, though she has already been killed by Ash during the arrest. She insists that all she wanted was to help her father reclaim the throne that was meant to be his. With the interrogation complete, Roland prepares to leave. Seeing this, Nightingale raises her voice, questioning whether he really intends to spare a murderer like Heidi. But Roland sets the record straight. Heidi Morgan is a resident of Sleeping Island. It is not his place to decide her fate. That decision belongs to Tilly. Later, Roland fills Tilly in on how Heidi sent the witches to filthy aristocrats as payment. Tilly asks if Nightingale verified this. Roland replies that it didn't take much for Heidi to cave since she seems mentally weak. Though saddened by the twisted truth, Tilly expresses her gratitude to Roland for separating the water from the milk. Roland is more than happy to help his sister. Furthermore, he reminds her that since Heidi is a Sleeping Island witch, it's up to Tilly to decide her fate. While Tilly understands what he is saying, she still wants to hear his opinion. What would he have done in her place? Roland simply replies that he would do exactly what Tilly would do. This makes Tilly crack a smile as she has figured out what must be done with Heidi. As she prepares to leave, their attention is caught by Lightning, who is reporting something urgent through the sigil. When Roland responds, she describes the sighting of strange monsters. She struggles to put it into words. This is an unprecedented discovery, as these creatures have never been seen before. She wants Roland to witness them with his own eyes. Later, Roland boards his steamship and reaches the location to investigate personally. As they walk through the land once occupied by the devils, they come across a mark, one seemingly left behind by Lotus. There are also holes in the cliff. While Nightingale isn't sure of their purpose, she claims to have seen similar holes in the barren mountains, though those were slightly bigger in comparison. The further she went, the more she felt something was watching her. And not just one thing. It was near the valley where the association had set up camp. A narrow path leads even deeper underground, but she didn't dare to venture too far. Roland, fascinated by this discovery, decides to investigate that place as well once they finish here. They finally meet Agatha and Soraya, but Lightning and the others are missing. Roland asks Agatha about it. Agatha explains that Lightning is flying all over the place with Summer. This uncharted land is like a giant playground for her to explore. Roland isn't surprised. If these ancient monuments and devil towers existed in his old world, they'd probably be turned into a national park with ridiculously expensive tickets. Nightingale overhears and questions what the hell he's even talking about. Roland quickly changes the subject, telling her to call Lightning back using the listening sigil. Soon enough, Summer, Maggie, and Lightning return. Now that everyone is here, Roland decides to begin the task at hand. Summer promptly uses her ability to recreate a holographic projection of what happened here. A giant stone tower suddenly materializes through her magic. The scene they're about to witness takes place right before the devils disappeared. Since Summer can maintain the memory for around half an hour, they will be able to see the entire process. But Roland is particularly interested in the devil with multiple eyes, the one that detected Sylvie's magic. Agatha reveals that it was at the top of the tower. However, it's too far from Summer's holographic range, so they can't see it for now. As the projection progresses, they witness a giant worm devouring the black stone tower. And after swallowing the tower, the worm simply disappears. Tilly is absolutely shocked to realize that this is the same worm that devoured Agatha's lab. What bothers her is why it would be hostile toward the devil camp. The only explanation Roland can think of is that this worm monster isn't being controlled by the devils, or at least, not by these particular devils. Agatha shares the same thoughts. There were no records of a creature like this in the past Divine Wars. If the devils truly had control over something this massive, none of them would have survived. But the question remains, if the devils aren't controlling it, then who is? Not to mention, there were also the invisible praying mantises that only Nightingale could see. Tilly would bet her life that these aren't just stray monsters wandering aimlessly. They have a clear purpose. Nightingale, however, believes that these creatures aren't being controlled by anyone at all. They have their own will. After all, hybrid monsters aren't typical demons. Judging from what they observed during the months of demons, the highly evolved demons possessed intelligence. It's possible that these creatures have grown smarter over time, adapting as they survived long enough. Roland is forced to acknowledge this possibility as well. After all, when the conditions and environment for intelligent life are optimal, their traits can change drastically. It's still unclear whether or not humans are truly the smartest organisms in this world. Suddenly, Lightning spots a tunnel. They light a torch and begin exploring this unknown place. Seeing how much remains unexplored, Roland decides to thoroughly investigate the first tall mountain in the western region. Later, as everyone waits, Lightning returns with a map in her hands after flying around and surveying the entire mountain. Roland thanks her for her efforts and asks if she discovered anything new. The only thing Lightning found was snow. No large animals, no demons, and no traces of devils. Roland takes the drawn map and examines it carefully. The layout of the mountains resembles a massive volcano, and there is moving water beneath the thick ice. Naturally, Nightingale is curious about what might be at the mountain's peak. Well, only the gods would know. Perhaps ruins, or even more Blackstone towers. Roland also takes note of the source of the Redwater River. Lightning explains that it's hidden within the clouds, and if not for the sound of rushing water, she wouldn't have noticed it. He asks if she attempted to enter the cracks where the water was leaking from. Lightning admits that she did try, but she couldn't get through. The cracks were large enough to pass through, half the height of a castle, but the mist created by the rapids was too dense, making it impossible to see. Strong winds pushed her back before she could go any deeper. Roland sternly tells her not to do anything so reckless again. If she ever wants to attempt something that dangerous, she must get permission first. Now that most of the area has been explored, Roland decides to return. But Lightning isn't satisfied as she still wants to explore the highest mountain. Roland, however, postpones further exploration until Sylvie returns. For now, his priority is preparing to confront the church. This is when Nightingale is struck by a sudden realization. She recalls how cold it gets at the mountain's peak. Too cold for anyone to set up camp there. This means the giant worm monster could be hiding inside the mountain. Since these creatures are adept at burrowing tunnels, it wouldn't be hard for them to create a nest within the mountains. And speaking of burrowing tunnels, she wonders if the holes in the barren mountains are also connected to these worm monsters. Meanwhile, back in Grey Castle, the stargazer Misson is ready to observe the night sky through a telescope Roland recently provided. One of his assistants reports that all the equipment has been set up. Misson then asks if there have been any disturbances in the star regions. The assistant responds with a yes. However, Master Skygleam from Area North 1 is resting after falling sick, so Master Void is taking his place. In that case, Misson decides to begin their stargazing session. As they peer through the telescope, they notice a faint red light in the sky, which of course shocks the hell out of the old man. The only thing running through his mind is that perhaps the prophecy has finally materialized into reality. He orders his assistant to scribble down what he is about to describe. Area East Summer 3, between the Six Path Star and Sky Scorch Star. The assistant questions what name to give it, but the old man suggests leaving it blank for now. Furthermore, he orders his assistant to gather all the master scholars on the observation deck and dismiss all the apprentices. Later, as all the big shots gather, the old man reports that signs of disaster have appeared. This causes a wave of panic among everyone present. They debate what to do next. One suggests reporting it to the king, but another raises concerns that Roland might not believe them. However, one scholar reminds them that even if Roland does not believe them, what they witnessed will not just disappear. At this point, Misan cuts them off and suggests keeping the news of the Red Star secret for now, as he intends to observe it for a few more days. 1 week later, they learn that the Red Star has not moved a single inch in all this time. The one reporting this is Master Ro's star. He further reveals that its light has been changing. If the descent of the star means everyone in the kingdom will see it, then it is very likely that the Doomsday Star will soon outshine the embarking star. For the public, a burning red star would be an ominous sight, and though they may not be educated in recognizing celestial bodies, they can still see them. Some stars are as bright as the moon and can always be recognized with the naked eye on a clear night. If this star has a unique color, it will definitely be discovered right away. Misan acknowledges the panic and uproar this could cause if the star becomes even more visible than it already is. So, he decides to write to Roland immediately, hoping they are not too late. We then cut to Roland and Anna spending time together. Anna is visibly sad because her name is not on the dispatch list for the upcoming war against the church. While Roland understands her concerns, he simply cannot put her in danger. Border Town's military-industrial production needs her, and without her, they would not be able to manufacture anything, from machine gun parts to howitzer fuses. These are crucial if they want to win the war. Initially, Anna thought he did not want her to go because the front lines were too dangerous. Roland assures her that while fighting the church definitely carries an element of danger, he is confident they will win. So, she has nothing to worry about, and staying in Neverwinter is the best way she can contribute to the war effort. But Anna still wishes to stay by Roland's side during this time. After all, this time is different from anything they have been through before. Fighting the church will be the biggest challenge they have ever faced, and it will either result in the destruction of Hermes or the defeat of the First Army. She fears that if he loses, she might lose him forever, and it will be months before she hears any news in Neverwinter. She does not want to endure those grueling months, anxiously awaiting word of his well-being. Roland finally agrees to let her tag along, but he sets one condition. If things go wrong on the battlefield, she must leave the northern region immediately, no matter what. She promises that if the situation turns dire, she will return to the western region immediately and take refuge on Slumber Island along with the other witches, continuing the fight from there. But for now, she wants to follow him everywhere he goes, though she knows this is not exactly what he wants from her. So she promises him that until the world becomes what he envisions, she will keep going in his place, all the way until mortals and witches can live side by side. Their sentimental and caring conversation gets them in the mood, and soon enough, they begin their fun session. We then cut to the border town. There, Roland greets the citizens. He starts his speech by acknowledging that everyone is aware of the kingdom's upcoming defense against invaders. Their enemy is the holy city of Hermes, which has already consumed Everwinter and Wolfheart, and now they are targeting the western region. While he knows that some people here have believed in God and trusted the church before, and he completely respects that, but he reminds them that the church took advantage of their goodwill, and now they must pay the price. By selling the Stone of Divine Judgment alone to the masses, they earn hundreds of thousands of golden royals annually, money that rightfully belongs to the common people. The reason is simple. The elites were not willing to spend much on these stones, so the church piled the cost onto everyday citizens, raising taxes, fees, and even confiscating property. The church promised that all the money the public gave them would buy God's protection, but it was all a lie, and the truth is evident. There were always people starving and freezing during the months of demons, which clearly shows that no one received the protection the church had promised. Reality has proven that without the church, Neverwinter City has become even greater, and the same goes for all other cities. So, Roland declares that he will never surrender or lose to these parasites. He announces that the First Army will crush them, and no one will ever steal from his citizens again. After hearing this powerful speech, the public erupts into cheers, openly denouncing the church and showing their full support for Roland. While Roland understands their enthusiasm, he reminds them that it is the First Army's responsibility to fight on the battlefield, and no one will be required to pay a war tax. That is something the enemy will have to do. So, he requests that they continue devoting themselves to the production and expansion of Neverwinter City as always. That is the best way they can help their soldiers on the front lines. Once again, the common people erupt into a round of applause for Roland's visionary thinking, confident that victory is within their grasp. The scene then cuts to Valleytown, where Iris's father Carlin has come to meet his daughter. However, his excitement fades quickly when she questions why he is even here. She had written him a letter a month ago, asking him to cooperate with the First Army's preparations. Carlin reveals that he had immediately contacted Valleytown's Duke Hall and assigned the butler to oversee everything, so he questions whether this level of cooperation is not enough. Iris only grows more disappointed upon hearing this. This battle against the church is incredibly important, and she wanted him to manage everything personally. The father and daughter go back and forth, with Iris repeatedly reminding her father of the responsibilities he should be handling. Eventually, after being firm with him, she gives him a well-deserved hug and welcomes him to Valley Town. As they sit down, Iris reminds him that they are waiting for Roland to arrive in Valley Town. But there is much more to do than just that. They need to transport everything required for battle, food, horses, fabric, medicine. She also received another secret letter from His Majesty. They will need to move as much metal and bronze here as they can spare. While Carlin is unsure if Roland can completely uproot the church and seize Hermes, Iris has complete faith in him. She believes that stopping the church from invading the kingdom at Blizzard Town will not be too difficult. Time is the resource His Majesty lacks the most. Since her father has not seen Roland's factories, he does not understand the true might of Neverwinter City. The firearms Roland has invented are incredibly powerful, and the factories just keep churning them out. Any citizen can kill an enemy with only half an hour of training. To sum it up, she is 100% certain that Roland can defeat the church. Since Iris holds Roland in such high regard, Carlin questions her in disappointment. If she thinks so highly of him, then why did Roland never respond to his letter? When she asks which letter he is referring to, he reveals that it was a marriage proposal for her. Given how much she praises Roland, he questions why she has not considered marrying him. Not to mention, she even rejected Timothy in favor of someone better. Iris finally decides to explain her point of view. Timothy needed an ally, or rather a lackey he could rely on, and marriage was just a pretense to make that happen. If she had refused, he would have discarded the Candle family and chosen someone else willing to obey him. But in Roland's case, he does not even need the Candle family. He chose her to work for him because of her abilities, not because of her background. Carlin, however, still believes his point stands. In fact, he argues that it is even better that Roland holds her in high regard. She could become the queen and give birth to a prince. He then reveals that the Candle family will become an indisputable ally to the royal family, and her brother's well-being will also be secured. But then again, she refuses his idea because Majesty Roland believes in love, and he is already interested in a witch. For a moment, Carlin thinks that Roland might be in a political marriage with a witch for an ulterior motive. But Iris corrects her father, revealing that he just so happened to fall in love with a woman who is a witch. And he strongly believes in love and envisions that love will be the protagonist in marriage. His father quickly reminds her that witches can't bear any children, so there won't be any heirs. But Iris reminds her father that this is a problem for Roland to worry about, and they do not have any right to enforce their beliefs either. We then cut to the First Army, which has currently unfolded into Blizzard Town. Captain Brian questions Iron Axe if they are not going to evacuate the Blizzard Town civilians beforehand because the Holy City may forcibly transform them into berserkers. Iron Axe does not want to risk alerting the enemy, or at least they can't take this risk before they finish setting up their base. He further assures Brian that they will be ready in 3 days, so afterward, their only responsibility will be to evacuate the villagers. This is when we see Maggie, who reports to Iron Axe that there are large troops moving towards Blizzard Town, and they number about 1,000 people. They don't have any supply carriages, and she did not see any civilian soldiers either. Some of them were carrying huge shields and spears. Iron Axe asks her about the scale of those big shields she speaks of, to which she reveals that they are just as tall as Iron Axe. Brian is seemingly worried to hear the report. The enemy is marching at an unusually high pace, and it's going to take at least 2 to 3 days for Roland to arrive at Valley Town. And the fortress cannons are not ready either. It looks like the church's response is faster than they had thought. But regardless of whether Roland is here or not, Iron Axe believes that they must carry out their duties instead of retreating a single step. He is not willing to let the enemy step 1 foot past their line of defense. Later, the church's soldiers finally come across the First Army. The church soldiers quickly draw their shields and hide behind them. The First Army, from the other side, also begins the barrage of bullets. While some church soldiers manage to withstand the barrage of bullets, some of them are dead on the spot. As the church soldiers march forward, the First Army has no option but to engage in hand-to-hand combat. While Iron Axe is distracted with one soldier, another enemy soldier tries to pierce him down. But Iron Axe quickly pulls out his revolver and takes the bastard down. All the while, Roland has also arrived at Willowtown on one of his best ships. Iris is also there to greet Roland and offers congratulations for the victory the First Army just snagged. Roland is glad to hear this, though he was already briefed while he was still on the ship. He also heard from Iron Axe that the Candle family ensured that all food and supplies were delivered, which helped successfully trick the enemy. Iris is glad to hear this acknowledgement, and also believes that it was the duty of the Candle family to perform. The Northern Region merchants were also glad to assist him. She then decides to take him into his newly acquired office in Valley Town. Actually, she talked to Duke Hall, and he promised to lend his castle for Roland to occupy during his stay here. She has further remodeled the guest office according to Bordertown's design. Floor-to-ceiling windows have been installed on the room's east side. Roland is quite astonished to hear this. though he is a little worried about the Duke and where he is going to stay until then. Iris reveals that he is staying at a countryside manor to avoid disturbing Roland. She then questions him if he wishes to meet him. Well, Roland believes that meeting him is not necessary, so there is no point in bothering him if he simply is not interested in these matters. In this case, Iris decides to escort him to the castle. For a moment, Roland feels absolutely smitten, given how much protocol he is getting. He is really enjoying the taste of absolute power. As Roland sits in his newly furnished office in Valley Town, he reads the recent exploits of the First Army. This recent battle was actually a notable event, as the First Army managed to take down 156 Divine Punishment soldiers in action. While the numbers seem small, it's going to serve as a huge slap to the church. He is also glad that the First Army did not encounter any difficult pure witches. If this had happened, Sylvie and Evie would not have been enough. This is when Iron Axe joins the scene and reports that there were 2 casualties and 21 severe injuries. All losses resulted from spears thrown at close quarters, but thankfully, the wounded have fully recovered and resumed their duties. Roland then instructs Iron Axe to arrange for a ship to transport the deceased back to Neverwinter. It looks like Iron Axe has some extra tidbits to share. After interrogating the church's military officer, he found very special intel, and it's related to Divine Punishment soldiers. Later, Roland meets the captured soldiers to interrogate them personally. He asks if any of them have participated in the Divine Punishment ritual before. He wants to know the entire procedure required to become a Divine Punishment soldier. However, not a single person speaks. Seeing this, Iron Axe grabs one of the soldiers by the collar, making it clear that cooperation is not optional. The soldier, rattled by the threat, quickly insists that he has already told them everything he knew, but Roland warns him that lies won't take him anywhere. Eventually, the soldier reveals that the ritual takes place in the Sky Tower, and that only Divine Punishment soldiers, their controllers, and the Pope are allowed inside. Everyone must remain completely silent to ensure nothing goes wrong. When Roland asks why silence is required, the soldier hesitates before revealing that the newly transformed warriors determine their commander through sound. Roland then inquires this bastard if he ever get the chance to command any punishment soldiers. The captive concedes that he once managed a small team of 10 Divine Punishment warriors. While those 10 soldiers obeyed his commands, all Divine Punishment soldiers ultimately followed the Pope's orders. Piecing things together, Roland deduces that the Pope must be using sound to control the soldiers. Initially, he had considered the possibility of brainwaves or a soul connection, but this information suggests otherwise. He notes that sound-based control is an incredible vulnerability. If communication between squads and Central Command is disrupted, it would cripple their coordination. Finally, he has identified a weakness to exploit. Since every Divine Punishment soldier has a designated controller, Agatha wonders what happens if their controller dies. The captive hesitates before claiming that he does not know. Roland can tell that he is lying. If this shithead does not want to suffer for half a month in the dungeon, he better stop playing games. Faced with no other option, the soldier confesses that Divine Punishment soldiers who lose their controllers instinctively head toward the Badlands. That is all he knows. Agatha presses further, but it appears the soldier has no more information. He claims he only heard rumors that long ago, some Divine Punishment warriors who never received orders set off toward the Badlands and never returned. Agatha then asks if he knows the process required to create these soldiers. In response, the captive reveals that only the Pope possesses that knowledge. Given this, Agatha asks how the church was originally founded 400 years ago, and if the soldier has heard of names like Alice, the Alliance, or Tequila City. The soldier's response remains negative. Even Roland can tell that this time, the captive genuinely does not know. Having extracted all useful information, Roland decides to leave. Before he does, Iron Axe asks what they should do with the prisoners. Roland simply reminds him to fulfill the promise he made earlier. Later, as Roland sits in his office, he questions Agatha about whether she knows anything regarding the production of Divine Punishment soldiers. As far as Agatha is concerned, research on Divine Punishment soldiers should have ceased after Tequila was completely destroyed, so she lacks concrete knowledge. However, she is certain the process cannot be as simple as the prisoner described. After all, his explanation does not clarify how a new pope inherits control over the existing soldiers. Furthermore, it is strange that Divine Punishment soldiers instinctively move toward the Badlands after losing their controllers. That region once contained fertile lands 400 years ago, but now there is nothing there besides the ruins of Tequila. Roland decides not to dwell on this mystery for now. The more pressing concern is how to deal with the Divine Punishment soldiers. If they are truly controlled by sound, perhaps Sister Echo could interfere with their commands. However, Agatha believes this is impossible. Echo would need to mimic the exact sound of a controller, which would require Nightingale's mist ability to get close enough to the controller and observe. During that time, Roland would be defenseless. and a single pure witch with special abilities could easily assassinate him. That is a risk they cannot afford to take. Although Roland is a mere mortal, weak and powerless, he is temporarily indispensable in the battle against the devils. Protecting him is the highest priority. Hearing this, Roland is unsure whether to take it as a compliment or an insult. He assures Agatha that he will keep a stone of divine judgment with him at all times. However, Agatha reminds him that the stones are only one line of defense and cannot guarantee his safety. Even Nightingale cannot ensure his survival, but having some protection is better than none. Nightingale takes this comment personally, responding sharply that as long as she is alive, she will not allow any harm to come to Roland. Speaking of protection, Agatha recalls why Lady Alice was able to become the Queen of Stars and the Chief of the Council. Beyond her incredible strength, her intelligence and strategies surpassed most witches. Many of her decisions saved the Alliance from destruction, and without her, Tequila certainly would not have lasted as long as it did. So she can't stand the fact that divine soldiers, which Alice created to protect witches, are now being used against witches. From her words, Roland deduces that the current divine punishment soldiers are not the same as those from 400 years ago. Agatha admits this is just speculation, she cannot confirm it. After all, only the Church knows what truly happened to the Alliance after Tequila fell. Later, Roland reflects on the current state of the divine punishment soldiers. Once the Queen of Stars, Alice, paid a hefty price to create them, but now they are nothing more than mindless killing machines for the Church. Suddenly, the listening sigil picks up Lightning's transmission. She reports that she is above Blizzard Town, facing northwest, and the enemy is currently retreating. They are all fleeing back to the Holy City. The report brings a smile to Nightingale's face. It seems the enemy is starting to feel fear. Roland thinks the same. This also means that the Holy City is temporarily unable to send reinforcements. He had predicted this would happen, as the army of 1,000 soldiers they faced was likely just a hastily assembled vanguard. Seizing this opportunity, Roland decides to evacuate the townspeople. Additionally, he sees this as the perfect time to negotiate with the local aristocrats. He assigns Iron Axe and Iris to handle the task. We then cut to the Holy City, where we see these devastated archbishops, who are in shambles after receiving loss in the battle against Roland. To them, defeating Blizzard Town should not have been a problem. After all, the Church had sent an army of 1,000 soldiers, accompanied separately by 300 divine punishment warriors. Not to mention, the commander leading the army was a veteran, with hundreds of battles behind him before he became an archbishop. There was no way they should have suffered such a catastrophic loss, even if they had faced devils or beasts from the Badlands. Just then, a priest rushes in, bringing urgent news. Archbishop Soli has regained consciousness. The two priests stationed outside immediately rush inside to interrogate him. The first thing they demand to know is what happened in Blizzard Town, and how he could have possibly failed so miserably. Still traumatized to his core, Soli quickly blurts out that Blizzard Town was a death trap from the start. The firearms Roland Wimbledon used were far deadlier than Timothy's. He insists that Pope Maine must be warned as soon as possible. However, one of the archbishops grows furious and grabs Soli by the collar. He is convinced that Soli is merely making excuses to avoid taking responsibility for the disaster. The priest demands that Soli answer for the terrible loss and the dire state of their remaining forces. Word of their failure has already begun spreading in the Holy City. If the Church had not silenced those spreading the rumors, this would have been the talk of the town by tomorrow. At that moment, Zero enters the room. She informs Soli that the Pope has summoned him and asks if he is able to walk. With the help of a few guards, Soli manages to stand and follows her. The two archbishops attempt to join the discussion with the Pope, but Zero denies their request, telling them to remain where they are. She reminds them that His Holiness does not wish to reveal the secrets of the divine punishment warriors. The mention of a secret only makes the archbishops more curious, but Zero reiterates that it is knowledge they are not meant to have. As they walk, Zero asks Soli how he intends to explain his failure to the Pope. Soli does not attempt to make excuses and acknowledges his defeat. He admits that he underestimated the enemy and is willing to accept any punishment the Pope deems necessary. Furthermore, he expresses his wish to become a divine punishment warrior. Zero suddenly stops, turning toward him. She asks if he truly wishes to abandon his position as an archbishop and become nothing more than a puppet. But Soli insists that the divine punishment warriors are not puppets. In his eyes, they are brave fighters, and he has dedicated his life to fighting gloriously for the Church. Zero, however, remains doubtful that the Pope will grant his request. Soli is positive that if he insists enough, he can convince Pope Maine to allow it. He has complete faith in the Pope, but Zero reminds him that it is not a matter of persuasion. You see, the transformation requires the witch's blood, and even then, it is not a simple process. Since Soli has already lost an arm, even if the ritual succeeds, his combat ability will be greatly diminished. So why would the Pope waste precious witch's blood on a cripple? Soli picks up on her suspicious tone. He recalls that the divine punishment ritual is a closely guarded secret known only to the Pope. So how does Zero know that it requires witches' blood? Soli is certain that Pope Maine would never have told her such information. Zero smirks, confirming his suspicions. Indeed, Maine never told her. But she does not need him to because she is the Pope. Before Soli can react, she eliminates him instantly, absorbing all his memories and experiences for herself. Later, Zero walks into the secret temple and begins to relive Soli's memories of the war. Through his memories, she witnesses the devastating defeat firsthand. The divine punishment soldiers were utterly overwhelmed by the First Army, unable to even get close before being taken down. Seeing this unfold, she finally understands why Soli lost the battle so decisively. This revelation piques her interest in Roland Wimbledon more than ever before. The scene transitions to Border Town, where Tilly seeks a conversation with Evie regarding Bloodfang, Heidi Morgan, and Annie. When Evie inquires about Heidi's whereabouts, Tilly explains that she has been punished. Skyflame resisted arrest back on Slumber Island and met the same fate. Tilly wants Evie's help to restore order to Slumber Island. While it is unacceptable for battle witches to oppress support witches, the reverse would be just as destructive. She believes that the remaining members of Bloodfang, like Evie, were merely deceived by Heidi and do not deserve discrimination. Evie is ready to assist but is unsure of what she should do. Ash advises her to share her story about Annie with the other Bloodfang members, while she herself will reveal the extent of Heidi's crimes. After the church is completely eradicated, Tilly plans to launch an investigation into the nobles of Wolfheart who imprisoned witches. If any of those witches are still alive, she is confident that Roland will be able to rescue them. As they discuss the witches Heidi sold to nobles, Evie recalls her friend Annie and begins to cry. Annie had been her warmth and comfort during her darkest times. The story then shifts to Roland in Blizzard Town, who appears extremely stressed. Sensing this, Nightingale arrives and offers him a much-needed head massage. An officer interrupts, reporting that a woman is waiting outside the castle, insisting on meeting him. The guards attempted to stop her, but she kneeled on the ground, pleading to see him no matter the cost. She has been lingering around the castle since yesterday. The officer further hesitantly reveals that the woman claims to be Wimbledon's wife. Nightingale goes absolutely bananas hearing this. She assumes that it must be Roland's illegitimate affair. Roland, on the other hand, struggles to process the absurdity of it. Since when did the fourth prince acquire a lover from the north when he had never even visited it? Determined to get to the bottom of this, Roland orders the officer to bring her in. The supposed wife enters his office and greets him, introducing herself as Livy from Blizzard Town. Roland demands to know why she is making such a claim and what exactly she means by it. Livy apologizes for spreading a false rumor but explains that she had no choice. She was certain he wouldn't see her otherwise. She clarifies that while she may not count as a legitimate wife, she had a relationship with his brother. This revelation shocks both Roland and Nightingale, who immediately assume she is referring to Timothy. However, Livy quickly denies this and instead claims that she was involved with Gerald. While she was aware of Gerald's ambitions to seize the throne, she hopes that Roland will be willing to help her for the sake of his deceased brother. She elaborates that she met Gerald while working as an escort in a pub. Due to the stark difference in their social statuses, they could never marry legally. Instead, they spent time together in a small countryside cabin. After Gerald's death, she was forced to return to the pub, where the owner was displeased with her sudden absence. He continually harassed her, recently even attempting to drag her into his room. She wants to escape but doesn't know how. The only person she could think of who might help her is Roland. Roland suggests that she return with them to the western region, promising to arrange food, shelter, and a job for her. However, Livy expresses her desire to stay in the north. Nightingale speculates that she might be skeptical of Roland's intentions, perhaps fearing that he, too, might take advantage of her. Given that she is nearly as beautiful as Iris, it's no surprise that the pub owner lusted after her. Roland assures Livy that he will contact Duke Calvin and arrange safe transport for her to Evernight City. Feeling deeply indebted to Roland's generosity, Livy expresses her gratitude and vows never to forget his kindness. As she turns to leave, Roland asks her one last question. Did she and Gerald have a child together? Unsurprisingly, Livy denies it. However, Nightingale can immediately tell that she is lying, and even Roland senses it. Livy does not seem particularly skilled at deception. This would explain why the pub owner was so persistent in harassing her. He likely knew of her connection to Gerald and suspected she had borne his child. He also understood that if Timothy discovered the child's existence, it would be doomed. To protect the last remnant of her love for Gerald, Livy had no choice but to obey the pub owner to keep him from exposing her secret. Nightingale suggests investigating the matter further, should Roland wish to pursue it. Roland considers her words and asks what she has in mind. In her response, she assures him she will do whatever he asks. For now, he simply tasks her with massaging his sore shoulders a little longer. The scene shifts to Zero and Isabella engaged in a private conversation. Isabella is visibly frustrated, lamenting how much of a nuisance Roland Wimbledon has become. She suggests that instead of focusing on the Kingdom of Dawn, they should prioritize Grey Castle. The other pure witches can be left behind in order to handle the situation in the Kingdom of Dawn, ensuring their control remains intact. Zero, however, does not immediately respond. Instead, she gazes out of her tower window, observing the Holy City's citizens below. To her, they appear small and insignificant, mere ants slaving away without understanding why. In her eyes, even she is no different than a tiny and insignificant pawn in the eyes of God, destined to fight senselessly until her inevitable demise. Isabella, not catching up, presses her to get to the point. Zero finally elaborates that she believes she is one step closer to fulfilling God's will. All she needs to do is devour Grey Castle's new king, and victory in the divine war will be assured. In her mind, Roland was sent as a challenge by God, and she intends to overcome it. Annoyed, Isabella attempts to bring Zero back to reality. She reminds her that their primary goal is survival. With their recent defeat, it is obvious they need to reassess their priorities. Even if they gather all of the church's forces and somehow manage to defeat Roland, the cost will be immense. His armies and witches will be annihilated, but so too will most of their divine punishment soldiers. Their real objective should be preparing for the incoming threat, the demons, who will arrive in less than 6 months. Zero challenges Isabella, asking what she proposes instead. Isabella suggests an alternative. Explain the truth to Roland Wimbledon. Tell him about the church's history, the 400-year-long alliance, and the real reason for their actions. Perhaps with understanding, he could be persuaded to work with them instead of against them. Zero scoffs at the idea. What if Roland refuses to believe them? She then further snaps at Isabella, reminding her that Roland is nothing more than a mortal, fragile, weak, and short-lived. His mind will deteriorate with age, and a simple illness could take his life at any moment. She refuses to entrust humanity's future to such a fleeting existence. To Zero, she alone is God's chosen warrior. She refuses to allow a mere mortal to stand at the same level as her. Isabella, realizing there is no changing Zero's mind, instead asks how she intends to defeat Roland. She reminds Zero that disabling the Stone of Divine Judgment requires close proximity. Additionally, the Alliance's high-tier sigils, which could aid them, are limited and can only be used once. If they use them now and fail, they will be left defenseless for the true battle ahead. Zero remains confident. She reminds Isabella of the thousands of souls she has devoured, proof of her strength. She urges Isabella to have a little faith in her abilities. After all, she is the only one capable of leading humanity to victory in the divine war. The scene shifts back to Blizzard Town, where Roland and his forces are conducting cannon tests. The devastating explosions cause Iron Axe to tense up. By now, he is convinced that no ordinary enemy could traverse the mountain paths under such fire. However, Roland reminds him that their enemies will not be ordinary. Worse still, their limited supply of ammunition poses a significant issue. If they had an unlimited stockpile, just 2 fortress cannons would be enough to wipe out the opposition. Meanwhile, Lightning is positioned near the impact site, marking the craters left by the cannon fire. She excitedly reports their successful hits, marveling at the sheer destructive power of the cannons. The sight fills her with renewed hope. They might actually stand a chance against the devils. As dusk settles, Roland returns to his camp, visibly anxious. Though they have done all they can to prepare, the final outcome is now left to fate. All he can do is wait. His thoughts are interrupted by Maggie, who arrives with an urgent report from the frontline defense. The church has finally made a move. The enemy has left its stronghold. It looks like everything is going according to Roland's expectations. Now, all that remains is rallying the First Army for the decisive battle. However, one lingering uncertainty remains, which is regarding the Pure Witches. Their role in the upcoming war is still unknown, and Roland has no way of predicting how they will be deployed. Well, it seems like Zero's plan is also going as she had intended. She too wanted Roland to come out and fight, just so she can get the chance to go near him. As Roland stands outside, wide awake and lost in his own thoughts, Nightingale and the others notice him and ask why he isn't sleeping. In response, he reveals that something seems to be under his sheets, and he always feels like something is poking him in the back. Andrea then recalls having the same feeling. There should have been at least 2 blankets underneath as cushioning, but it seems like the Northern Duke does not seem to know the meaning of hospitality. But Ash believes that just having a roof to shelter them from the cold nights is already more than one could ask for. So making these kinds of comfort-seeking complaints is inappropriate. While Ash and Andrea butt heads over the argument, Roland continues to gaze at the sky, anticipating the looming war ahead. He feels a little overwhelmed by the possibility of being unable to defeat the church, but Nightingale tries to assure him that as long as she is alive, she won't let him get hurt. Later, on some random day, Roland receives a personal letter from the Pope. The letter serves no purpose other than roughly explaining the origins of the church and mentioning the existence of devils. Nightingale wonders if they might be requesting a ceasefire through this. But Roland believes that if that were the case, the Holy City would have never tried to occupy Blizzard Town. Then again, they can't deny the validity of the letter either. After all, the handwriting in the letter is indeed the Pope's. For a moment, Roland entertains the possibility that this might be a scheme orchestrated by the Pure Witches. On one particularly sunny day, Lightning reports that the enemy has advanced to Sector 9. It seems like the church is trying to launch an unexpected attack. Whatever the case, Knight Carter quickly alerts his soldiers to ready the cannons, as the enemy is right over their heads. Soon enough, the troops set up the cannons and begin blowing up the church's soldiers, as if they were nothing more than bowling pins. Maggie and Lightning, acting as scouts, further report to the First Army that the enemy has passed Sector 12, so they order the soldiers to open fire. And so, the First Army begins bombarding the hell out of those zealous bastards marching toward them in numbers. But it looks like the First Army is about to run out of luck as they prepare to face a pure witch. This witch seems to have the power to control bugs because, with a single command, a swarm of insects begins to flood the battlefield. The horde of bugs coalesces into a giant monster. Seeing the threat before her, Lightning quickly pulls her goggles over her eyes, ready to engage, and instructs Maggie to keep providing coordinates to the artillery. Meanwhile, the foot soldiers steadily close the gap between themselves and the First Army, having already breached the 300-meter line. Now that the church's soldiers are close enough, they start throwing spears at the First Army. The poor First Army soldiers begin dropping, while others get slaughtered in hand-to-hand combat. Roland, meanwhile, watches the entire battle unfold from a safe distance atop a watchtower. Some of the enemies have breached the first 3 trenches and are already advancing toward the 4th. But judging from the retreating enemy vanguard and their reinforced defenses, the Divine Punishment Army's assault is clearly weakening. If this keeps up, they won't be able to touch the remaining 5 trenches and artillery squads. Then suddenly Sylvie notices something shocking. The ground beneath the First Army soldiers is sinking, all thanks to Vale, who pops right out of the ground. She uses her magic to control the soldiers, forcing them to take their own lives. This absolutely shocks the hell out of Roland. He is so stunned that probably the most shocked we've ever seen him. Meanwhile, the First Army soldiers manage to take down one of the witches who summoned the insects. She gets riddled with bullets, making her death inevitable, and thus, she falls in a pool of her own blood. Zero grits her teeth at the losses she's facing. She absolutely did not account for this many casualties before launching this surprise attack. She can't afford to lose this time. She meticulously prepared for this day. She even made sure to infect the letter with some kind of powder, and she's certain that if Roland touched it, he must be infected by now. You see, this powder has a scent that mortals can't detect, and it can seep into the skin as well. Once Vanilla, one of the pure witches, activates her ability, they will be able to pinpoint Roland's position in the crowd. While her plan is thorough, she still seems to have underestimated the strength of his snow powder weapons. His weapons were able to attack from miles away, severely injuring her forces before they even reached the perimeter. And Vale can only buy them limited time with her abilities. Vanilla quickly reports that the barrier concealing their presence is about to collapse. She can't hold it together any longer. Eventually, the cube they were in suddenly explodes, and all the witches inside are revealed. Zero quickly gestures for Vale to clear the way, and Vale follows the command without hesitation. But as she marches, she begins to fear that she might not survive this. Anyhow, while Vale occupies the soldiers in front, Zero signals Isabella to perform her role as well. Right away, Isabella activates her magic ability, known as Infinity. The blinding light not only throws everyone off guard, but it also nullifies all the divine stones of judgment. Now the stage is completely set for Zero to make her move. She zips past all of the soldiers and appears right in front of Roland. As soon as she tags Roland with her powers, he finds himself inside the virtual world she created. The place he falls into is his school. Of course, none of this makes sense to Roland as to why the hell is he seeing his school. For a moment he wonders if he's dreaming. Then he considers the possibility that he has somehow returned to his own world. But if he really did return to his home planet, then why is he still occupying the 4th Prince's body? Then he spots Zero standing behind him and immediately recognizes her as one of the pure witches from the church. But in her introduction, Zero makes sure to add that she is also the 15th Pope of the Holy City of Hermes, and her name is Zero. And given how strange this place is, she's certain that he is definitely not Roland Wimbledon. Roland asks if she created this place, to which she claims that he is the one who did. This place is buried deep in his memories and appears frequently in his daily life. She is very, very curious to know what exactly this place is. After all, the 4th Prince of Grey Castle absolutely never lived in a place like this. But Roland doesn't feel the need to tell her anything. He starts analyzing his situation. He's not sure what to do to escape this illusion. Based on past experiences with nightmares, jumping from a high place would normally wake him up. Meanwhile, Zero is confident that she'll learn everything there is to know about Roland sooner or later. who he is, where he came from, and why he became the fourth prince of Grey Castle. Everything will become clear to her once this is over. Usually she explains to her opponents all about her illusion, its effects, its rules, and the impact of her ability. But this time, she decides to keep her mouth shut. With that said, she stabs the hell out of Roland. But even after dying, Roland finds himself back, with no wounds at all, though the ground is still stained with the blood he lost. He's trying to figure out where that sword she summoned came from, and how he's even alive again. Zero charges at him once more and delivers a slash that kills him instantly. And once again, he spawns back. By now he's sure he's not in some twisted nightmare. If it were, killing himself would have let him escape it. It feels more like an eternal battlefield. And if he's thinking right, there must be some conditions he needs to fulfill to leave. If she can summon weapons out of nowhere, he wonders if he can do that too. So, when Zero jumps at him for another strike, Roland imagines a shield in front of him to save himself. An invincible barrier appears just in time, blocking the direct hit. Now that he's figured out he can conjure anything by imagining it, he pulls out guns and starts bombarding her with bullets. But that's still not enough to defeat her. She appears right behind him and kills him on the spot. Roland is back again, and she can't help but commend him for the unique perception he's showing. She's quite astonished at how he figured out her illusions without needing any prior explanation. And the weapons he's summoning are pretty interesting. She's never seen anything like the lump of metal he's conjured. His creations are indeed terrifying, but she makes it clear they're not as threatening to her. She's been watching him the whole time, while he's never been able to notice her actions. In all these years, she's devoured countless warriors, including transcendental witches. There's no way a mere mortal like Roland could win. Suddenly, Roland conjures a little box right in front of her eyes. It explodes on her face, causing her to die instantly. But of course, she respawns. As Roland stands tall after figuring out how to fight with her, he calls her out for her filthy tactics. He doesn't like how she makes her opponents despair and concede defeat, just so she can steal all their knowledge. But Zero isn't fazed by his righteous ramblings. She just suggests that Roland admit defeat if he knows this much. That's when Roland summons Optimus Prime to attack her. But this sassy woman suddenly appears right behind him and slits his throat with her dagger. The back and forth continues, and every time she kills him, she demands he concede defeat. She points out how he's losing stamina and mental strength, and if this keeps up, he won't be able to achieve anything except suffering. Hearing this, Roland realizes that she's continuing to pressure him to give up, even though she could just keep attacking him. This only means her stamina is running low as well. But as if Zero heard his thoughts, she reveals that worrying about stamina is the last thing on her mind. She has enough stamina to die over 100 times, so Roland's basically making things harder for himself by not conceding. Roland begins to weigh his options. He thinks about ways to trap her, like caging her, using proximity mines, or maybe electric field lasers. But then again, none of these things would truly trap her. Just like she said, if he can't restrict her movements, he'll definitely lose. Roland then asks her how many battles she's fought in the past 2 years. She claims it's probably 1,000 or more, though not many have impressed her. Their wills were stronger than Roland's, but they still lost to countless deaths, and not many chose to endure the hopeless defeat. She reminds him once again that continuing this torture is pointless. Meanwhile, Roland rhetorically asks her if no one has ever defeated her in those 1,000 battles. He wonders if there's really no one mentally stronger than her, no one who won by creating lava or oceans. Zero reiterates what she had said. Even if she had been defeated, she wouldn't be standing here now. She further points out that even if someone tries to change the surface they're standing on, it would deplete their mental stamina so much that it would be like suicide. No one could ever change the entire world like this. Only a god with omnipotent strength could pull off something like that. Roland responds by saying that gods don't exist in his world. Zero then questions if he concedes defeat, especially since he has no way to turn the tides in his favor. But Roland refuses to quit, not without trying one last time. He wants to try once more, and if he fails, he'll concede. Hearing this, Zero readies a sword crackling with intense energy, prepared to give Roland the final blow. But that's when Roland pulls out his biggest trick. He makes the ground beneath her unbelievably slippery, so slippery she can't move an inch. She's left confused, wondering what in the world he just did. Roland smirks and boasts about making a minor adjustment to the battlefield. Without the support of friction, her speed doesn't matter. She won't be able to move at all. To educate her further, he explains the law of motion. When an external force isn't acting on an object, it will remain static, just like she is right now. This phenomenon is known as Newton's first law. After rendering her a defenseless husk who can't even move, Roland produces a bunch of machine guns and begins bombarding the hell out of Zero. The scorching heat burns her alive over and over. But more than the pain, what hurts her most is the fact that she's getting her ass whooped. She refuses to believe that he's able to create something that doesn't exist, and that what he says is true. Roland then breaks it to her that he simply altered the atomic distribution of the floor. The atoms are now tightly packed together, neat and organized like soldiers. The surface is incredibly slippery and tough, so tough that even the hardest diamond would be like marshmallow in comparison. So, it's basically over for her. As Roland intensifies the scorching flames, making her die over and over again, we shift to the real world, where Nightingale is watching over Roland's unconscious body. Tears well up in her eyes as she thinks it's her fault. She failed to protect him. Just then, Lightning appears and reports that the Pure Witch is awake, meaning it's finally time to interrogate her and get all the secrets she knows. Along with Nightingale and Lightning, Agatha joins them. As they walk through the corridor, Lightning points out how the witch woke up by herself, sitting on the bed when Ash was checking on her. She also said that this prison is meaningless to her. Once they reach the room, they hear Isabella muttering about how Zero seems to have completely lost, even though she was supposed to be a spoiled god's child. Nightingale is intrigued to hear the mention of a god's child. Isabella, on the other hand, is willing to share everything she knows, and she's ready to accept whatever they decide for her. She starts by explaining her abilities. She can disable the effect of the stones of divine judgment, and no amount of stones can stop her if they're within her range. But otherwise, she can't go through walls or dig underground, so they don't need to prepare any special rooms for her. Hearing this, Nightingale deduces that she must have been the one who disabled Roland's stone. Isabella admits to this, saying she had no other choice, as Zero was already blinded by God. She believed that only on the battlefield could one receive the smile of God. She further reveals that Zero used the Battlefield of Souls on Roland. The Battle of Souls is essentially a fight of wills and consciousness. The loser surrenders everything, and the winner takes it all. Ever since Zero awakened as a witch, she's never lost on the battlefield. She's devoured over 1,000 mortals and witches, absorbing their memories, knowledge, and lifespan. She's lived for 200 years. However, Isabella never expected Zero to lose to a mere mortal prince. But since Roland has won, Nightingale asks why Roland hasn't woken up yet. Isabella reveals that the outcome of the Battlefield of Souls should have been decided instantly. If Roland didn't turn into Zero on the spot, that means Zero failed to devour him. This means Roland can't wake up because he can't handle such a gigantic memory. Basically, Isabella has no clue when he might wake up because there's never been a precedent for this. She can't explain it. But there was one time when Zero had devoured Garcia, that Zero was completely exhausted for a while. She recalls finding some interesting details in Garcia's memory, so she spent more effort than usual to process them all. It might also be that Roland is trying to absorb Zero's memories, and he needs more time to do that. As long as he's alive, he will eventually wake up. Hearing this, Nightingale gets scared when she considers the possibility that Roland might not be able to handle the 200 years' worth of memories. In the worst-case scenario, he might never wake up. Pushing this aside, Nightingale and Agatha continue interrogating Isabella about the church and how much she knows about the Alliance. Isabella claims that the letter they sent contained everything regarding the Witch Empire and the Devils, but Agatha reveals that the letter wasn't particularly useful to them, since they already know that much. She herself is a witch from the Alliance. Of course, Isabella is shocked to hear this, so Agatha decides to make it easier for her by explaining. Agatha is from the holy city of Tequila, from 400 years ago, and she's seen its destruction firsthand. Devils aren't exactly rare. They have camps in the misty forest to the west of Grey Castle, as well as at the end of the Redwater River. Furthermore, Roland has already fought those devils once. What Agatha really wants to know is how the Alliance became the church. Isabella then reveals that the records mentioned there was a conflict within the Alliance during the escape. It happened on the northwestern side of the mountains. There weren't many details, but the Alliance split into two factions. One group mostly consisted of Tequila witches who were attuned to enter the labyrinth ruins in the mountains. The other group consisted of witches from Comet City, who wanted to keep heading north, uphold Lady Alice's will, and settle in the Hermes Mountains. These witches became the church. Hearing this, Agatha is shocked to realize it was basically an internal war among the witches while they were on the run, which was nothing more than suicide. Isabella further reveals that it was also to kill the non-combat witches who didn't belong to Comet City, because that was the only way for the church to bury the history. If it hadn't been for the internal conflict among the witches, the Four Kingdoms wouldn't have been able to escape the Alliance's control. However, it also meant that the church couldn't have as many divine punishment soldiers. So, the church buried the past to make capturing witches easier and create mindless divine punishment soldiers. In Nightingale's eyes, it's all madness. It's like every witch in the church went insane. But Isabella reveals that she never cared about who controlled the continent. Her only wish was to defeat the devils. After all, this is the whole reason the Alliance was created. Zero was incredibly deranged, but her beliefs were stronger than anyone else's when it came to defeating the devils, and that's why Isabella decided to help her. After hearing all of this twisted information, Nightingale draws her daggers, ready to kill this piece of shit on the spot. But Agatha manages to calm Nightingale down, explaining that killing Isabella won't solve their immediate problems. It looks like there's also another interesting tidbit Isabella wants to share. Zero did allow pure witches to read the text in the Holy Temple, but absolutely no one except for her was allowed to reach the prayer room on the top floor, because whoever stands there can directly face God. Later, we see Nightingale releasing her frustration by punching the wall after getting no leads on how to wake Roland. Agatha reminds her that they've already done all they can, so all they can do now is wait. No matter what, they should tell everyone what they've learned. As for Isabella, she tries to assure Nightingale that killing her won't benefit anyone, as she's still a very useful asset to them. Nightingale then heads back to Roland's room to check on him, but before entering she spots Anna beside him, so Nightingale retreats into her mist. While Roland may be unconscious, as long as he's alive, Anna is willing to keep waiting for him to wake up. A day, a year, or even her lifetime, she will stay by his side forever as long as he's still breathing. So she wishes him to sleep soundly. Meanwhile, Nightingale can do nothing but shed her tears as she watches this. I'm not sure if she's crying because of Roland's miserable state or because Anna might be his true love. A while later, Roland wakes up in his bed. He's spooked to find himself in the bed out of nowhere, because the last thing he remembers is standing in the thick of battle with Zero. Since he doesn't want to lose, he tries to summon more guns to keep fighting. But soon he realizes that nothing is happening, which makes him believe that the rules of the game have changed. Roland takes note of how this place is entirely unfamiliar to him. It doesn't resemble anything he has seen in his previous life, or the life he had in the border town. Confused, he runs through the space and enters another room. He notices a collection of mysterious books, none of which he remembers owning, either in his current life or his previous one. The TV in the room is on, broadcasting a news report. It states that last night, an unknown explosion occurred at the city university. A lecture building was completely destroyed, and the roof had collapsed. This shocks Roland. He was supposed to be in a fictional world of illusions, so how is he back in his previous world? Rushing to the balcony, he looks out at the bustling streets below, only to realize that nothing resembles the previous world he lived in. As he stands there, a woman appears in the corridor and starts berating him for blocking the way. Roland eventually returns to the room and immediately demands Zero to come out and fight him. But no matter how much he yells, no one appears. He sits down, deep in thought. If this is another illusion from the Battle of Souls, then there must be a way to escape. He decides to use one of the oldest tricks in the book, stacking tables and chairs on top of each other. He figures that jumping from a height might jolt him back to reality. But just as he's about to do so, a little girl enters the room, calling him Uncle. She looks almost exactly like a younger version of Zero. The sight catches Roland completely off guard, and he loses his balance, slipping and falling. And then he wakes up. He finds himself back in his bed in Neverwinter. Anna, who had been watching over him, is absolutely shocked to see him awake. Overwhelmed with emotions, she rushes to him and embraces him passionately. Roland gives her a reassuring pat and apologizes for making her worry so much. He then asks how long he had been unconscious. He guesses maybe 3 days, or at worst a week. But Anna breaks it to him that it has been almost 2 months. To be specific, 1 month and 22 days. Roland is stunned. He quickly asks how he even survived that long without food or water. Anna explains that Twilight, one of the Bloodfang witches, has an ability that allowed her to plant a leech seed in him. All she had to do was eat an extra meal every day, and all the nutrients were absorbed into Roland's body. Roland finds this fascinating. But what amazes him even more is that, despite being in a coma for so long, he doesn't feel any fatigue or muscle soreness. He expresses his gratitude to Anna for taking care of him all this time. But Anna brushes it off. To her, whatever she did for him is nothing compared to what he has done for everyone. He has already fulfilled the promise he made to the witches. The promise to eradicate the church's armies. Every witch in the Union is indebted to him. Any of them would have gladly sacrificed themselves for his safety. Even if he wasn't here, there would be plenty of people willing to take care of him. But Roland only wants her to be his caretaker. Just when Roland is in the perfect mood to play clap-clap, Anna suddenly remembers that everyone has been eagerly waiting for him to wake up. She reminds him that he has just regained consciousness and should focus on recovering first. Roland insists that he's already strong enough to clap her, but Anna bonks him on the head and runs out before he can say anything else. As she heads out to call the others, Roland's mind drifts back to the moment in his dream, when he saw Zero as a child, calling him Uncle. It's a mystery to him why she said that. Even stranger, he has never lived in the city he saw in his dreams. Before disappearing, Zero had also hysterically screamed that she would never let him go. He isn't sure if her words were a curse or something else entirely. Anyhow, he is sure that there is something he has yet to figure out. He is soon jolted out of his thoughts when all the Witch Association members enter his chamber to meet him. While everyone expresses their relief at seeing Roland alive, Agatha makes sure to scan him for any traces of magic, and thankfully, she finds nothing. She then asks if he remembers anything, like Zero's memories. Hearing this, Roland questions how she knows that he holds Zero's memories. In response, Agatha explains that one of the pure witches they captured had already spilled all the beans. Ash also considers the possibility that his mind might be scrambled by 200 years of memories, making his previous personality fade away in a sea of new ones. So, she wants Roland to prove that he is actually Roland and not Zero. Nightingale confirms that the person before them is indeed Roland. Then his sister also meets him, expressing her relief and welcoming him back. Later, Iron Axe, the old man Parov, and that priest guy in charge of infrastructure also pay him a visit in his office. While Roland was in a coma, there were no abnormalities in the city, though some people did panic. Roland believes that improving public morale is the most important task right now, so he wants them to spread the news that their king is still alive. He wants the message out by tonight, followed by a grand banquet at the castle. As dusk settles, the streets are decorated in celebration, and food is being distributed for free. We then cut back to Roland, where Nightingale also arrives, hesitant to make eye contact with him. After all, she had failed to save him. But Roland assures her that she is not to blame as it was clearly not her fault. He then hugs her warmly and expresses his gratitude for the great job she had done on the battlefield. As the night deepens, Roland heads back to bed to get some sleep. But as soon as he closes his eyes, he is once again transported to that annoying dream from before. And just like last time, he spots little Zero, still calling him Uncle. She wants to know why he was acting strange yesterday. She sets breakfast on the table and tells him to eat. Roland is seriously spooked, experiencing this weird dream all over again, and wants to end it right away. So he grabs a knife and decides to kill her. But before he can act, little Zero starts berating him for yesterday's antics. She wants to know why he had been standing on the furniture. Did he spot some roaches on the ground or something? Roland lies, saying he was trying to clean the dirty ceiling. But the little one isn't buying it. If he really wanted to clean the roof, a wet rag attached to a tall stick would have been the easiest way to do it. Besides, why the sudden urge to clean when she's been the one handling the chores ever since she arrived? The mention of her just arriving catches Roland off guard. The girl, on the other hand, demands that he cough up some money for groceries. The fridge is almost empty, so she has to go to the market today. Roland begins rummaging through clothes he's not even wearing. Tired of her uncle's unusual behavior, the girl reminds him that the money is in the drawer. So Roland finally starts going through the table and eventually finds his wallet. He asks how much she needs and she demands $20, only because she can't carry more groceries than that though. Instead, he gives her $50 and tells her to use the leftover for next time. She takes the $50. That's when he notices her index finger wrapped in a bandage. When he asks about it, she responds that she got cut while picking up glass shards. With that, she heads off to school. She won't be coming home for lunch, so he'll have to do the dishes today. But he quickly reminds her that it's already summer vacation. To this, she replies that she's going to cram school. As she leaves, she suggests that he go to the hospital if his head still hurts. On her way out of the apartment building, Roland notices her greeting her friends that are her age. Not gonna lie, the more he searches for answers, the more complicated this whole thing gets. For a moment, he considers following her. It's then that Roland spots Garcia Wimbledon walking down the corridor. His instincts kick in, and he prepares himself, knife in hand. Garcia merely requests that he step aside so she can pass through. Seeing this, Roland asks her if she doesn't recognize him. Garcia simply sneers at his strange question and continues on her way. Roland, undeterred, asks her to confirm if her name is Garcia. Upon hearing her name, Garcia quickly spins on her feet and throws a fist at his face. Though she doesn't know how he knows her name, she warns him that if he keeps this up, things won't end well for him. With that little threat, she barges into her apartment, numbered 0827. Roland notices that the apartment number has 3 digits, and the corridor stretches on endlessly, lined with a plethora of apartment rooms. As he thinks about it, he recalls how Zero once claimed to have devoured thousands of warriors, one of whom was even a transcendent witch. That basically means all the residents living here are those she's devoured. By now, Roland has no doubt that Zero created all of this, but he wonders if it was her intention. He still doesn't understand why she would create such a bizarre dream realm where she doesn't even recognize herself as a pure witch, instead role-playing as a middle school student. It's pretty obvious that this modern environment has to do with his own memories, but he's not sure what role he's supposed to play in all this. He knows he isn't supposed to be in this building of the defeated people. After all, he still has all of his memories, and he's aware that he's dreaming, so he can leave this place at any time. Since his head is slightly throbbing from falling last time, it suggests that the dream feels incredibly real. If that's the case, he wants to figure out just how far this dream goes in terms of realism. Roland heads back to his bedroom and then takes a look into his storage room. Afterward, he enters Zero's room, where he finds a diary. He opens it and starts reading a few illustrations she's drawn of herself and him, mostly writing about day-to-day life. February 16th is the day she moved between schools and was eventually assigned to live here. The landlord's name is Roland, and he's not very orderly. She writes that he works at a bar and always smells of alcohol. She doesn't like this place, but her parents said it was the cheapest apartment. They told her she'd have to go back to the countryside if she complained. Roland is creeped out by all the nonsense she's written, but he continues to read nonetheless. On February 27th, her school started, and at the same time, Roland lost his job. He now only eats instant ramen for dinner. By March 2nd, he used up all his allowance on ramen, so she had to talk to him about it. On March 3rd, he agreed to her suggestion and decided to give her a bit of money every month to buy fresh groceries. By March 8th, she had started to get used to living here. The final note, from June 25th, mentions how terrified she was when she saw Roland fall from a chair as she came in. But at least the sofa absorbed his fall. Roland finally shuts the diary and begins piecing things together. It seems like everyone in this dream world has a backstory that fits the modern setting. However, all these stories are quite complicated, and he probably doesn't have the mental capacity to create them. He also notices a few textbooks. From the cover, he can tell he used these books in middle school. The book he's currently looking at is chemistry. Seeing the periodic table inside, Roland gets excited to read it, especially since it could help him refresh his knowledge. But as soon as he attempts to read it, everything begins to distort, and he wakes up in reality. After entering the dream world twice, Roland has finally figured out some sort of pattern. The first thing he noticed is that the passage of time is not the same as in reality. If he spends 8 hours in the dream world and then wakes up, it's still nighttime in the real world. The second thing is his brain activity. Maybe it's because the dream is so realistic, and when he acts in the dream, he doesn't have time to sleep or rest, which is a major challenge for him, as he'll always be sleep-deprived at this rate. If he can use the time difference and rest while dreaming, he's sure it will make things much more efficient. Thirdly, the dream world itself. He's not sure if this place even has an end or any boundaries, or how many fragments of memory it contains. Lastly, he wants to figure out how much hidden or forgotten information he will be able to discover here. The next day, in the conference room, Roland holds a meeting with all the government representatives. Now that the threat of the church is gone, there's no question they need to prepare for the devils. Neverwinter will have to devote all their efforts to the upcoming divine war. This means they'll need to direct their attention toward the other kingdoms as well. They'll have to recruit the Everwinter and Wolfheart kingdoms to combat the devil threat. Though Barov is concerned it won't be that easy. Roland points out that the news of the church's fall will undoubtedly spread across the entire continent, and he wouldn't be surprised if some church-affiliated aristocrats retaliate. However, this is a good opportunity for Neverwinter. It doesn't matter if it takes money or military strength to deal with the rebelling aristocrats, they just need to pull everyone into Grey Castle. Moreover, with the arrival of next spring, the Neverwinter seaport will also be put into use. Barov's task is to formulate a recruitment plan, rent ships from the bay merchants, and find places to accommodate the newcomers in the city. Additionally, Roland officially incorporates Iris Candle into the city hall, appointing her as the vice head of the department. While Barov is grateful for Roland's consideration, he is confident he can handle this on his own. However, Roland makes it clear that his decision has already been made. He then shifts his attention to Sister Scroll, since education will also play a major role in their preparations. Roland asks her how the training is progressing for intermediate-level teachers. The girl reveals that only Ferlin has passed the exam so far, and she worries that this might not work out. Roland gives her permission to choose new intermediate teachers from the student pool to encourage the top students to continue their studies at school. He also suggests adding scholarships, reward systems, and advises her to work alongside Ferlin to figure it out. Once the students pass the exams, they'll be able to become intermediate teachers and receive a monthly salary of 50 silvers. Scroll is unsure if spending this much to gather intermediate teachers is necessary, but Roland has a bigger picture in mind. Becoming a teacher won't be the only future they can choose. They will also have the freedom to enter any field or industry they like. After all, an educated population is useless if they can't be utilized, so funneling them into industries they're suited for is an important step. Furthermore, Roland plans to write a curriculum for introductory logic and critical thinking for her soon. For now, he tells her she's free to go. After dismissing the meeting, Roland asks Kyle Sichi to accompany him to the office. Once Sichi enters the office, he quickly expresses his desire to leave if Roland doesn't have any new ideas for production to share. Roland tells him to relax and take a seat, as he has something important to give him. First, Roland asks if Sichi has ever considered becoming the director of the chemical manufacturing department. Of course, Sichi responds with a resounding no, as he has no interest in abandoning the vials and jars in his laboratory for pointless management responsibilities. but Roland asks him to listen before making any hasty decisions. He acknowledges Sichi's devotion to chemistry, driven by his desire to learn its secrets and his unwillingness to spend time on anything else. However, Roland promises him that he can help him uncover the very essence of chemistry. This much is enough to get Sichi interested. Roland finally places the periodic table in front of Sichi. Roland promises to give him the periodic table permanently if he accepts the director's position. If he performs well in the role, Roland further promises to send him a complete version of intermediate chemistry. Unsurprisingly, Kyle Sichi takes the deal. Roland wishes him the best of luck, confident that the history of chemistry will bear Sichi's name. We then cut to Isabella's prison cell, where she has been held captive for almost 2 months. Roland has not come to see her, and it's driving her crazy. Though the amenities provided to her don't make it feel like a traditional prison, she has no freedom. She writes down everything she knows, hoping that Roland might spare her when he reads it. And then, the moment arrives. Roland comes to meet her on this fateful day. Isabella is astonished that he is finally here. The first question Roland asks is if she is Isabella, the witch who dismantled the stone of divine judgment he was wearing. Isabella makes sure to show proper respect, while Roland, on the other hand, has a lot of questions for her. The most pressing one is why the results of his battle with Zero weren't like she had described. Being the winner of the challenge, Roland didn't exactly inherit everything. Isabella finds this impossible. Roland has a hunch that he's not a witch, which is why he's unable to inherit Zero's knowledge. Isabella then elaborates, the sole prize in the battlefield of souls is memory and lifespan. Since mortals already possess these two things, they can inherit them from others through this challenge. However, witches' abilities can't be absorbed, because magic can't simply be spliced onto someone else. Otherwise, Zero would have devoured her long ago. But since Roland is the first case she's seen where he didn't absorb a single piece of memory, it's a curious situation. Roland then asks her if Zero ever mentioned where the defeated go. She reveals that the losers always disappear completely as if they never existed. Roland presses further, asking if there's a difference in the results of the challenge if someone voluntarily surrenders or resists until the end. Isabella claims that all of them disappear. However, Zero once said that there were 2 types of memories she could absorb. One type was disorganized, with residual consciousness from the losers, which would affect Zero herself. The other type was fully complete, allowing Zero to examine every last detail. It seems Roland has figured something out. He decides to put this topic aside for now and focus on Isabella herself. Roland tells her to be grateful for her ability, not because it's particularly unique, but because it can't be used to directly harm someone. No matter what she's done, even though she aided Zero in attacking him, she is no more than an accomplice. Therefore, he won't execute her, but she must pay for her crimes, just like everyone else who has broken the law. Isabella falls to her knees, willing to accept any punishment necessary as long as Roland defeats the devils. Roland reminds her that devils are the enemies of all humans, and of course, he will fight them to the end. However, he won't go about it the way the church would have. He won't waste the potential of humanity in winning the divine war. He wants her to change the habits she had in the church. Isabella clings to the ground, saying she's willing to adhere to any command Roland has for her. Roland is startled by her submissive behavior. He quickly orders her to get up, telling her this is not Hermes, so she doesn't have to act like a servant. Here, all she needs to do is help Agatha in her research on magic. Furthermore, there will be no concept of pure witches, and she will be called the Repenting Witch from this point onward. Before Roland leaves, Isabella asks him about her friends, Vanilla and Mary. Roland assures her that they are being treated better than she is. With that, he leaves. Isabella is left staring out the window. Seeing the beautiful day, she cracks a smile as if she's finally found the salvation she's been seeking. Later, Nightingale complains to Roland about how easily he let Isabella get away, even though she almost killed him. Roland reminds her that it was Zero who almost killed him. Isabella merely made it possible. Since Isabella didn't do anything unforgivable, and most importantly, he didn't suffer any permanent damage, he wants to leave the matter as it is. She will be a good PR example. Her case will help people understand that crimes can be repented and forgiven, as long as they aren't too severe. After all, devils are the greatest enemies, and using Isabella's abilities to bolster their chances at victory is the best form of redemption. Nightingale finally relents, deciding to keep an eye on her. As Roland stands there, he reflects on what Isabella said about the 2 types of memories. One chaotic and scrambled, while the other is complete and ready to be examined. He begins to wonder if this is why Zero kept pressuring him to surrender during the battle. The only explanation is that if the loser willingly surrenders all of their memories to Zero, then she faces no side effects. This is probably why she didn't solely focus on killing Roland. This process seems very similar to the one in which Roland possessed the real Roland's body. Specifically, he had taken over his memories and was able to examine his past however he liked. He didn't have to spend time memorizing it, and there were no consequences to pushing his memories to the back of his mind. Given that Prince Roland had been killed by Garcia's poison and had no willpower to resist his death, there were no consequences when our boy took over his body. He then thinks about what would have happened if a person with a strong will lost. Based on what Isabella had said, memories of people with strong will would affect Zero herself, including changes in thoughts, personality, and even beliefs. Absorbing thousands of souls had made her complex, technically a very different person from who she had been before. So, her way of revenge was probably to inject all these wills into her own thoughts. It was very likely that she had tried to incorporate all these wills into her own mind as a form of revenge. But in doing so, her own mind would be lost in the storm, which meant his mind would suffer the same fate as well. There was also a slim chance that, in the chaotic storm of memories, each unyielding soul's willpower would strive for dominance, and Zero would try to take this chance to make her come back. However, Roland was not a man of this era. The amount of information a person in the modern age absorbed in a single day was equivalent to what someone in ancient times would take in over months or even years. So, as a man from an era of information overload, his mind naturally filtered out the useless information while keeping the important parts. After all, the ability to retain vital information and discard the rest had been hammered into him. In the end, Zero lost everything she had gained, including her own memories, forming a strange new world, her dream world, where she became a child and started a new life. And now, he was responsible for raising this newborn. As the night settles, Roland returns to the dream world again. First, he wants to figure out a solution for the sleep hours he has been missing out on. He has been awake for around 20 hours if he counts the hours in real life. So, he decides to take a nap in the afternoon later. As he walks into the drawing room, he comes across Zero, who looks startled to see him awake so early, even though she hasn't even started making breakfast yet. She quickly decides to make breakfast, and after a while, she returns with the food in hand. After serving the food and having a brief conversation with him, she proceeds to leave for school. Since she won't be coming home for lunch, he will be responsible for washing the dishes as usual. As she leaves, Roland notices that she has been wearing the same clothes for 3 consecutive days. And what's more, why do they even need to survive on money if they are living in the realm of dreams? Since the money is going to run out soon, he decides to look for an opportunity to start earning. First, he gathers all the valuable stuff lying around. But the items he has aren't particularly high in value. Currently, the only valuable source of income he has is the $1,500 that Zero's parents wire her every month. But there's only $12 left in the account, and there are still 4 more days until the next transfer. Even if this jewelry is made of gold, he can probably pawn it for $1,000 at best. Though, he only wants to use it as emergency funding. He then enters the storeroom, and surprisingly enough, there's a lot more stuff than he initially thought. After scanning the room thoroughly, he estimates that he could sell some of these random appliances for around $100. Then, suddenly, he notices a locked door in the storage room. The door looks spooky as hell, like something designed to torture people in the middle of the night. Seeing the giant lock, Roland suddenly remembers the 2 keys on his keyring. After unlocking it, when he finally opens the door, he finds himself staring at the holy city of Hermes for some reason. But he quickly shuts the door. He then peeks at the other side of the wall where the door is located, but from the outside, there's no sign of a door at all. There aren't any signs of renovations either. This only means that when the apartment building was constructed, the door was wedged into the wall. He wonders if his apartment is the only unit with a door like this, or if other units have them as well. If so, what kind of spaces would those doors lead to? After putting on his winter clothes, he opens the door again and ventures inside. But even his jacket isn't enough to keep him from freezing. For a moment, he wonders if leaving the door open would help cool down his apartment as well. As he walks further, he thinks that maybe this is a memory Zero left behind. There are houses in ruins, and when he enters one of the storage units, he finds supplies. The food inside is incredibly fresh. The grapes he picks up were probably shipped from the old holy city. As he eats, he decides to keep searching for something valuable. Eventually, he comes across a box full of jewelry. He picks up the jewel box and decides to leave. He is sure that if he can sell it, he's going to hit it big. Just as he starts enjoying the thought of all the treasure he's found, he suddenly begins to feel dizzy. And soon enough, he opens his eyes to find himself lying in bed, with Zero sleeping soundly beside him. Seeing himself lying so close to Zero sends Roland into an absolute frenzy. Zero wakes up as well, startled by the commotion he is making. She recalls how he had gotten heat stroke, and thanks to her, he ended up in bed. Otherwise, he would have spent the entire night on the floor, though she believes he should be thanking her. First of all, Roland is having a hard time believing that a kid her age managed to drag him to the room. But nonetheless, he pats her on the head and expresses his gratitude. The girl gets a little flustered upon receiving praise from her senior and decides to get going to make some breakfast. But Roland assures her that he will take care of breakfast, which of course shocks the hell out of her. Eventually, he prepares the food, and once it's ready, he presents it to her. She is astonished to see the meal they are having, which is quite extravagant compared to their usual diet. For a moment, she wonders if he bought the meat himself, to which he says yes and reveals that the entire fridge is now stocked with this juicy deliciousness. Zero is absolutely astonished to hear this and has a hard time believing it. Roland further gives her the good news that he has gotten his salary, so he bought some food to celebrate. Now that she thinks about it, it means he must have gotten heat stroke from being in the sun too much while job hunting. Roland goes with it and confirms her doubts. He further assures her that they don't have to worry about money anymore. They then engage in some good banter while they eat. Once she is done with breakfast, she decides to get going to school. But before she disappears, he reluctantly asks if she knows any bookstores nearby. We then cut back to Neverwinter, where Roland has finally woken up from his dreams. While he spent 3 days in the dream realm this time, it's only noon when he wakes up. One night in reality equals around 2 days over there. During this trip to the dream realm, he was pretty productive and finally managed to sell some things, making a lot of cash. With the extra money he earned, he bought new clothes for Zero and some old books as well. However, only the books he had read before contained any content. The rest were blank, which means the dream world only consists of the information he already knows. Fortunately, he had spent a lot of time online in the past, so there was a ton of knowledge that had been useless to him in his old world. That information, which he had once considered useless, had always been buried in his deep mind. Even if he had only glanced at a blueprint once in his previous life, the memory of that blueprint existed in his dream world. Thanks to that, he extracted a lot of useful information that he could now use in the real world. Suddenly, Nightingale appears, reminding him that it's lunchtime. Roland acknowledges it and instructs her to bring him some food from downstairs as he intends to eat in his bedroom. She then notices the notes he is preparing, making her curious about where he is getting all this new information and these ideas. To which he reveals that all these ideas had always been in his head. It's just that he had forgotten about them. She picks up one of the notepapers and begins reading, only to feel dizzy after skimming through all this sci-fi nonsense that is way above her head. Anyhow, she remembers how Barov was hoping to meet with Roland as he has 2 letters that require his private attention, to which Roland simply tells her to fetch Barov and bring him to his bedroom. Once the old man arrives, he is bursting with joy, barely believing that he has been invited into Roland's private quarters. Anyhow, Barov begins revealing that Roland has 116 pending letters that arrived while he was unconscious. Most of the letters were from regional aristocrats regarding commerce or visits. The aristocrats were expressing their unwillingness to give up their power to the government, wanting to maintain their traditions and prestige. Well, Roland has no issue with that. When spring comes next year, those guys will understand what the wise decision is. Roland questions Barov about the letters that require his personal attention. He wants to know who sent them. The old man reveals that one letter was from the astronomers, and the other was from the Kingdom of Dawn, but they arrived while he was in a coma. When Roland reads the letter sent by the astronomers, he learns that the Star of Doom has appeared in the night sky. According to historical records, it's a crimson star that never changes its position. But if the red moon appears in orbit, Roland is sure that it would definitely influence the planet, though the observation also shows that its size is extremely small. So the crimson moon is not a natural celestial body, but a man-made satellite. Though this clearly does not make sense to him. To get to the root of it, he instructs Barov to invite the astronomers to Neverwinter City. But Barov reminds him that the astronomers previously refused to come to Neverwinter, so he isn't sure they would come this time either. However, Roland reminds him that the situation is different. The astronomy tower has found what they have been looking for, so the only thing left for them is to continue observing it. He wants them to know that Neverwinter City has developed a new and improved telescope, and that they have found some old texts regarding the Star of Doom. Now, Roland shifts his attention to the second important letter, which concerns the Kingdom of Dawn. It appears that the news is not good. Prince Appin of the Kingdom of Dawn seems to have developed a deep hatred toward witches due to the actions of the church. This means that, for now, Roland will not be able to maintain friendly relations with the Kingdom of Dawn. He instructs Barov to send a formal diplomatic letter to the kingdom. First, Roland wants to congratulate Prince Appin on becoming king and urges him not to hold a grudge against witches. He wants Appin to understand that the pure witches who once served the church are different from other witches. Furthermore, Prince Appin should know that Grey Castle has already established an official witch organization, and any aggression toward them would also be considered aggression toward Grey Castle. However, Barov is uncertain whether Appin will accept this message. There is a possibility that he might even perceive it as a threat. Roland clarifies that it is indeed a threat. If Appin Moya decides to recklessly attack the Holy City next year out of spite for the church, then it will be time for the Kingdom of Dawn to have its ruler stripped of his seat. The next ruler of the Kingdom of Dawn must be someone willing to stand by Grey Castle and fight alongside humanity in the Divine War. For example, Andrea of the Quinn family would be an ideal candidate for this position. With that said, Roland dismisses the old man. Later, Roland meets his sister Tilly. Ash leaves to give them some privacy. Once they are alone, Tilly informs Roland that she is preparing to leave soon. She plans to make a round trip to Slumber Island. Roland sighs in disappointment upon hearing that she is leaving so soon. However, as her words sink in, he realizes that she is only making a round trip, meaning she will return. Tilly further reveals that she intends to bring the good news of his victory against the church to the witches of Slumber Island. She wants them to know that Neverwinter, the city of Grey Castle, has completely eliminated the threat of the church, meaning no one will have to hide on the island anymore. She warns him that she will be bringing more witches to Grey Castle, and hopes that it will not be burdensome for him. Roland, however, sees this as a dream come true. The gates of the western region are always open for new witches. Tilly teases him, remarking that even his apartment buildings will not be able to accommodate so many witches. Even if only half of them decide to come, the number of witches will be many times larger than the current witch union. Roland assures her that he will ensure the construction of more buildings to accommodate all of the witches. Tilly is pleased, but has 3 conditions she wants him to agree to. First, if any witch wishes to leave Neverwinter for other towns, she hopes Roland will not restrict their freedom. Roland has no issue with that, though he reminds her that Grey Castle has not yet been fully unified, so he would not recommend venturing beyond the western region. Tilly assures him that she is merely speaking hypothetically. The second condition is that if any witches do not wish to serve him, he cannot force them to. Roland responds by asking if he is free to persuade them to serve, to which Tilly agrees, as long as his methods are not coercive. Lastly, she hopes that Slumberspell can continue as an independent entity. Of course, the organization will still share a portion of its profits with Neverwinter. Speaking of Slumberspell, it is a witches' organization created to resolve conflicts between battle witches and support witches. It also generates income for the island through contracts. In other words, nearly everyone on Slumber Island is part of the group. If Slumberspell remains independent, it means all of them will remain under Tilly's command. To Roland, it sounds like a private company, so he has no objections. However, he reminds Tilly that they will still need to abide by the laws of the government. Tilly is pleased that he has agreed to her terms. She then decides to prepare to gather her belongings, as her ship will arrive in 3 days. Furthermore, she is taking Evie and Softfeathers with her. However, once the Bloodfang situation is dealt with, she will bring them back. Roland asks if she will return before the Months of Demons. Tilly assures him that she will, as she intends to participate in the Months of Demons just like last year. Not only that, but she also wishes to fight alongside him against the devils until winter ends. Later, Roland holds a special feast for the witches. Everyone is astonished when they see the otherworldly cuisine for the first time. They are unsure how they are supposed to eat it. That is when Roland reveals that this feast will be called Hot Pot. The eating process is simple. Each person places their desired ingredients into the pot and eats them once they are cooked. And so the witches eagerly grab pieces of meat, boiling them in the steaming pot before devouring them with delight. The atmosphere is lively as everyone enjoys the feast, reveling in the unique dining experience. Later that night, as Roland sits in his bedroom, Anna arrives with exciting news. The new steam engines she had been working on are finally completed. Overjoyed, Roland embraces her, expressing his admiration and gratitude for her hard work. However, amidst his happiness, his thoughts drift to Nightingale, and his mood darkens. He reflects on how, in this era, it is common for nobles to have multiple women. Yet, despite this societal norm, he struggles with the idea of having 2 women with him simultaneously. So he is uncertain about how to handle the feelings Nightingale harbors for him. Anna, noticing the sudden shift in his attitude, immediately understands his worries. Astonishingly enough, she is already aware that he wants to confess the love Nightingale harbors for him. However, she also makes it clear that she wishes to remain the only woman in his life, at least for now. Then, out of the blue, Anna questions his origins, suspecting that he may not be from this world. She explains that, regardless of one's social standing, no man in this world would hesitate over the prospect of having multiple women unless there was a vast difference between the values of his world and theirs. Similarly, while some people might be tolerant of witches, no one would befriend them as closely as he has. She reminds him of the bet they made, where she was supposed to guess his true identity. In her journal, she had written that he was a visitor from another world, not from hell, but from a much better place. Roland is completely astounded by her intelligence and observational skills, realizing that she has pieced together the truth with remarkable accuracy. He admits that while she may be wrong about some finer details, her overall conclusion is correct. Anna then reveals that she also predicted he would confess to her about Nightingale. She tells him that she will think about accepting Nightingale into their relationship, but for now, she needs time to consider it. She reassures him that she understands his concerns and is willing to talk to Nightingale, but for now, she suggests he get some rest, as it is already late. Meanwhile, in the Kingdom of Dawn, we shift focus to Yorko. Through his thoughts, we learn that ever since Apan Moya ascended to the throne, the kingdom has been in turmoil. The most common topics in the pubs revolve around rebellions from lords at the border. Foreign commodities in the markets have dwindled, and merchants have stopped transporting slaves for trade. Soldiers are frequently seen breaking into civilian households to conduct unwarranted searches. In a surprising move, Apan Moya has not only taken in all the Wolfheart slaves, but has also granted them identities as free citizens. While this might seem like a noble act, it directly interferes with Roland's plans, as he had intended to bring all the refugees under his rule. Yorko, unable to send more slaves to Grey Castle, finds his profits disappearing. However, he remains optimistic, confident that his position as ambassador will present new opportunities sooner or later. That said, he is aware that Prince Apan's hostile stance toward witches could lead to conflict with Roland, who has taken on the role of their protector. Yet Yorko decides not to dwell on it too much, as his duties only extend to representing Roland in the Kingdom of Dawn. Wanting to enjoy his evening, he considers asking Denise if there is anything fun happening that night. However, before he can leave, his path is blocked by Otto. Yorko is less than thrilled by Otto's arrival, as he has never brought good news in the past. Nevertheless, they sit down in the living room for a discussion. This time, Otto is not here to deliver a message for Roland, but rather to ask Yorko for a personal favor. He hands Yorko a letter, and upon reading it, Yorko learns that Otto wants him to participate in an auction. However, Yorko is unsure if he even has sufficient funds to bid. Otto quickly reassures him that finances are not an issue. He further explains that if Yorko agrees to help, it will be equivalent to directly assisting Roland. Rumors have surfaced that a witch is being auctioned this time, and Otto wants Yorko to acquire her. However, Yorko is hesitant given the risk involved. Prince Apan is actively capturing witches, and if he discovers Yorko's involvement in saving one, it could jeopardize their relationship. Otto, however, dismisses the concern, arguing that they can deal with the consequences later. Besides, Prince Apan is not foolish enough to jeopardize the crucial alliance between the two kingdoms over a single witch. While Yorko is willing to follow through with the plan, he is not sure why Otto is so determined to do this. In response, Otto reveals that he has a witch friend currently living in the western region, and he is doing this for her sake. Roland believes that every witch is precious and that their reputation should not be ruined by the lies of the church. Later that night, Yorko arrives at the location where the auction is being held. Upon arriving there, a refined lady takes the special letter Otto had given him and personally escorts him inside. Shortly after, the host appears and presents the audience with the first item of the auction. Yorko is in disbelief upon seeing such an unfamiliar product. The woman who escorted him notices his surprise and explains that these crystals are often referred to as sunstones or light crystals, but the auction house calls them magic stones since they originate from the nests of devils. Seeing that Yorko is new to underground auctions, she assures him that she will provide any necessary explanations. It's common for newcomers to react this way. Everyone who attends an underground auction for the first time is awed by the magic stones. Finally, the main highlight of the auction is revealed: a witch. She is introduced as a refugee witch from Wolfheart. She has no name, and her ability allows her to use the power of devils to heal herself. Immediately, the bidding begins with a starting price of 510 gold royals. The bids rise quickly, eventually reaching 1,000 gold. The escort accompanying Yorko asks if he intends to place a bid. Yorko replies that he wants to wait a little longer. While Otto assured him that the special letter was worth a lot of money, Yorko is uncertain about its actual value. He estimates it might be worth around 2,000 royals. As the bidding reaches 1,260 gold, Yorko is forced to bid 2,000 gold royals. However, someone from the crowd counters with a bid of 2,300 gold, leaving Yorko a little unnerved. The assistant of the opposing bidder appears to be a man. Since the assistant's gender is determined by the bidder's gender, it means the bidder is a woman. The audience is curious as to why would a woman want a witch. Eventually, Yorko raises his bid to 4,000 gold royals. No one makes a counteroffer, and the witch is sold to Yorko. Later, Yorko meets the witch he has just won. Seeing her tied up with her mouth gagged, he removes the cloth covering her mouth and politely asks for her name. She introduces herself as Emmy. She then questions why he has not untied her hands, especially since he saved her. Yorko explains that he does not want to risk her escaping. After all, he does not have another 4,000 royals to spend if she were to get captured again. For her safety, it's better if she remains restrained. He promises to arrange for her freedom tomorrow. Not only that, but he also wants to introduce her to a sanctuary for witches. There are many of her kind waiting for her there. The life of hiding and running will come to an end for her. All she has to do is wait until tomorrow. With that, he prepares to leave. When she asks where he is going, he simply replies that he is off to enjoy the nightlife. Later, Yorko goes to find the escort who assisted him during the auction. However, he cannot find her anywhere. Instead, he is ambushed by a witch named Annie. Annie turns out to be a friend of Emmy. When Emmy notices Annie restraining Yorko, she quickly explains that he is the one who saved her. However, Annie refuses to believe it. She finds it impossible that someone would spend 4,000 gold royals just to save a witch. Seeing how familiar Annie seems to be with auction prices, it does not take Yorko long to realize that she must have been the one bidding against him earlier. Yorko quickly clarifies that he is not trying to deceive anyone. In fact, he is here to save witches under the direct orders of Roland. Roland, the king of Grey Castle, takes care of witches. He firmly believes that witches are no different from humans, and he even waged war against the church for their sake. Annie presses him further, asking why he did not untie Emmy if his intentions were pure. Yorko reiterates that he was afraid she would run away. Despite his insistence, Annie remains skeptical and continues to interrogate him. Yorko even tells her about an organization that provides shelter for witches, hoping it will convince her of his sincerity. However, the mention of an organization only makes Annie angrier. She immediately recalls Bloodfang, a group with whom she had a terrible experience. Annie then drags out the escort, who is battered and bruised. While she initially had no intention of letting either the escort or Yorko live, she ultimately decides to spare them, given that the king of Grey Castle had defeated the church. With that, Annie proceeds to leave, taking Emmy with her. Yorko warns her about the dangers lurking outside, but Annie reassures him that she has already considered the possibility and has taken precautions. Realizing he cannot force them to go to Grey Castle, Yorko gives up on the idea and shifts his focus toward his escort, whose name is 76. That night, Yorko spends his time with 76, despite her being unconscious from the ordeal. The next day, Otto visits Yorko to check on his well-being after hearing about the attack. Remembering the events of the previous night, Yorko becomes irritated. If it had been anyone else in his place, he is certain that 76 would have been killed. At that moment, another figure enters the room, the supervisor of the auction house, a man known as Silverface. He sincerely apologizes for the incident, expressing relief that Yorko remained unharmed. The auction house has already launched an investigation into the matter, and the only clue they have gathered so far is that the witch's escape was a well-planned operation. Yorko acknowledges this and insists that, since he won Emmy in the auction, she should not be handed over to anyone else. He then inquires about his escort from the previous night. Silverface informs him that 76 will be punished by the auction house, as it was her duty to protect customers, and she no longer has the privilege of working there. Seizing the opportunity, Yorko requests to buy 76. However, the supervisor reminds him that she has been officially labeled a criminal. Despite this, Yorko offers 500 gold royals. Eventually, Silverface decides to gift 76 to Yorko, considering it a form of reparation for the trouble he endured. Since she is no longer fit for service, the auction house sees no better use for her. Meanwhile, the story shifts to an old man, whose identity remains unknown. As we peer into his thoughts, we learn that he has been managing his family business for years after inheriting it from his father. Under his leadership, the Merchant Guild has grown into a massive organization, gaining influence among upper nobles and powerful businessmen. However, he worries about the future. As long as he is alive, the elites who support him remain reliable allies or useful tools. But with the current chaos, he is unsure whether the business will continue to thrive after his passing. At the end of a dimly lit path, he arrives at a gate and instructs his escort to wait outside. Once he passes through the gate, we encounter a moat, where soldiers clutching magical stones inform him that the emissary is waiting for him. As he crosses the moat and reaches its center, he calls for the emissary to appear. A sinister purple energy begins to coalesce, forming a weird pulsating heart that speaks in a chilling voice. The heart demands a status report. The old man regretfully reports that Prince Appin is capturing witches, and he does not have any intentions to stop either. However, he assures the heart that he will find a way to make things right. The heart acknowledges his efforts and places its faith in him. It then expresses its opposition to Prince Appin's policy of exterminating witches. Unlike the prince, the heart believes that witches are invaluable assets in preparation for the day of doom. Furthermore, the heart reveals that God is searching for a candidate capable of wielding its immeasurable power. Since the old man has been a good help so far, the heart offers him the possibility of immortality, on the condition that he successfully executes the intended plans and also finds a suitable candidate. The old man inquires whether Grey Castle has any potential candidates. The heart admits that it does not know, but instructs him to keep searching before the impending doom consumes them all. Finally, the heart questions the truth behind the rumors of the church's downfall. The old man confirms it, claiming that the area beneath Blizzard Town has been completely destroyed. It's littered with craters and holes, and the entire holy city is dead. There's no trace of its former glory. With that, The heart decides to dismiss the meeting as it's feeling quite tired. Once the heart, which is also referred to as the emissary, leaves, one of the knights hands a potion bottle to the old man as a reward from the emissary. It's a gesture of generosity, given in recognition of the old man's loyal service. Without hesitation, the old man quickly chugs the potion and immediately feels strength surging through his body. Just 3 years ago, he needed a wheelchair to move around, but now he can walk as if it's no big deal. If he can fulfill the emissary's demands and achieve immortality, he's certain his family's progress won't be destroyed. Honestly, I have no idea what's up with this heart, but hopefully we'll find out soon. Cut to Roland, who's enjoying some tea with Nightingale. As they settle into their seats, Roland hesitantly asks if Anna has told her anything. Well, Nightingale admits it, but she refuses to reveal anything, claiming it'll remain a secret. Still, she's glad that Roland told Anna about her wish. At the foot of the northern mountains, we discover that Neverwinter has successfully created an oven capable of smelting steel. The workshop workers are skeptical, doubting if this oven can really pull it off. After all, smelting steel requires an extremely intense fire. But Roland reveals that fire isn't the only possible heat source. He gestures for Anna to begin the experiment. I honestly have no clue what in the hell this thing is. I even read 2 separate translations for it. Either I'm too dumb to understand it, or the translations are trash. But once they activate this oven, fire erupts out of it. Seeing the sparks dance in the air brings a smile to Roland's face. Because to him, these sparks symbolize humanity's next great leap forward. Unfortunately, at their current level of technology, they can only smelt steel using air. But Roland is confident that if he can acquire pure oxygen in the future, the fire will burn even stronger. Beyond handling day-to-day matters, Roland has also been piecing together his memories. So, as soon as he hits the bed, he finds himself opening his eyes in the dream world. The first thing he does there is to check his phone. One of his clients wants to purchase more supplies. After that, he goes to check on Zero, who is still sleeping soundly. Then, he heads outside in search of food. At a restaurant, he orders some beef noodles for himself and sits down to enjoy his meal. As he eats, he reflects on his experiences in this city. He's mostly stuck to the same 2 streets, but in the distance, the city looks lively and prosperous. Still, he wants to see just how big this place really is. That's when he suddenly spots Garcia jogging past. Everyone on the street is mesmerized by how gorgeous she looks. Judging from their chatter, Garcia is preparing for an upcoming competition. Apparently, if the weather is nice, she runs here for an hour every day. Roland doesn't understand why everyone is so familiar with Garcia, nor does he know what competition they're all talking about. That's when the shop owner walks over to fill him in. Turns out Garcia is a martial artist, and not just any martial artist. She's one of the most famous people around, even making appearances on TV. Not to mention, the reason they're all able to live here is thanks to her. To clarify further, the shop owner points Roland's attention to a demolition notice. As fate would have it, real estate developers have been trying to tear this place down for years, hoping to replace it with new skyscrapers. They claim this district is too old and no longer fits with the rest of the city. They wanted everyone to relocate to the urban areas, and if Garcia hadn't stood up to them on TV, they all would have been forced out a long time ago. The shop owner is confident that now that Roland is staying here, he'll come to understand this place's charm too. Later, Roland still has no idea what the hell is going on. Sure, the dream world pieces together memory fragments in some incredible ways, but this is just too bizarre to believe. And what's this nonsense about demolishing these apartments? If this place gets torn down, he has no idea what he's going to do, especially since all the doors connected to his memory fragments are inside this building. And so is the creator of this world, who of course is our boy. The next day arrives, and Zero steps out of her room, rubbing her sleepy eyes. Looks like Roland woke up before her. And not only that, he even made sure to prepare food. Zero is quite surprised to see him up this early. Roland explains that he found a job, so he's not the lazy guy he used to be. With his monthly paychecks combined with Zero's allowance, he's confident they can live a pretty comfortable life. As Roland sits down, he asks Zero if she knows anything about Garcia. Zero reveals that Garcia joined the Martial Arts Association at 20 years old, and there are rumors that she has never lost a single match during tryouts. Because of that, she's been regarded as a celebrity ever since. Roland finds it interesting that there's an entire organization dedicated to martial arts, leading him to believe there must be a lot of martial artists around. But contrary to his assumption, Zero denies it. Only those who have awakened their natural force can truly become martial artists. And awakening is just the bare minimum. Without tenacity and perseverance, one will only become a puppet to power. Curious, Roland asks where she learned all this. Zero casually replies that she learned it in school. Her teachers even said that if someone has time to daydream about becoming a martial artist, they'd be better off spending it on extra practice problems. With that, she heads off to school, leaving Roland reflecting on this natural force she mentioned. Perhaps a puppet to power is similar to how witches experience antiphase when their bodies are brimming with uncontrollable power. He then turns on the TV and watches a martial arts match. The arena and intensity of these battles seem very different from traditional mixed martial arts. From a competitive perspective, it doesn't seem more entertaining than boxing. But as he watches the fighters, he notices something intriguing. Their durability far surpasses that of normal people. This makes him believe that the natural force doesn't just enhance strength and speed, it seems to grant special abilities as well. Then, he notices something shocking. Devils are also participating in the competition. Even stranger, the audience isn't panicking at the sight of a devil in the flesh. It's as if devils are just part of everyday life. This only makes Roland believe that people see the devils as foreign fighters, rather than actual threats. Suddenly, he starts feeling hungry. It's almost lunchtime, and he also realizes that Zero hasn't returned yet. Just as he gets up to grab some food, an unexpected news report catches his attention. Breaking news, an armed robbery has been reported on Central Mountain Road. Roland feels a wave of shock because Central Mountain Road is the same route Zero takes to school. The reporter goes on to say that the police have sealed off the area and advise people to stay inside. A sense of panic grips Roland. Zero has played a huge role in creating this strange dream realm, so if something happens to her, the entire world might collapse as well. Without wasting another second, he dashes through the streets, determined to reach her. When he arrives at the reported location, he doesn't find Zero. Instead, he sees that the criminal has already been handcuffed by the police, which means she should be safe. But he still doesn't know where she is. Seems like he got worked up over nothing. Just then, a blood-curdling scream reverberates through the area. Reluctantly, he follows the sound. In a quiet corner of a dark alley, Roland finds a man who turns out to be a zombie. Bro's not actually a monster, but he's consumed by some kind of natural power, something little Zero explained to us earlier. He then twists his neck around to make eye contact with Roland and asks if he's a martial artist. Of course, Roland denies it. But that doesn't stop the monster from wanting a taste of him anyway. Roland questions the mindless zombie if he's being consumed by the natural force. The zombie just scoffs, saying Roland is talking complete nonsense. He believes people have no clue where this power comes from and know nothing about its true essence. While the monster himself can't tell exactly what this power is, he can feel its presence inside him, and he's sure of one thing. It definitely doesn't belong to this world. It's a gift from the deities. He had thought that the robbery commotion would attract one or two martial artists, but that robber got arrested before any martial artist even showed up. Roland, on the other hand, simply balls up his fist and delivers a devastating punch straight to the bastard's nose. The poor sucker staggers backward as Roland keeps pummeling the hell out of him, treating him like nothing more than a punching bag. It looks like the zombie guy can't use his natural force against Roland, so he ends up getting completely wrecked. Then, Roland grabs the natural power lingering over the dude's head and yanks it right out of his body. Suddenly, the dark red energy Roland snatched begins to coalesce, erupting into a brilliant yellow light, causing him to absorb a newfound power. He can feel warmth coursing through him. Later, he heads back to the apartment, where he finds Zero already there. The first thing Roland asks is where she's been all this time. She claims the cram school kept them in overtime. Plus, she doesn't have school tomorrow. Now it's Roland's turn to explain himself, what he was up to. He simply says he went out looking for her since she didn't come home on time. Zero reminds him that she's not a little kid who gets into trouble so easily and suggests that next time, he should just wait at home unless it's an emergency. Roland acknowledges this and decides to have dinner. As they sit down to eat, she mentions again that she doesn't have school tomorrow and doesn't need to start her homework right away. Roland then suggests she tag along with him tomorrow since he's heading to the library. But Zero isn't so sure she wants to hit the books right after finally getting a break from them. To persuade her, he offers to buy her some clothes too. And so, the next day arrives, and they head out from their apartment to the city's commercial hub. First, they'll go to the library before buying her clothes. That way, they won't have to carry bags around. Though Zero reassures him that she doesn't mind if he doesn't buy her anything, Roland just pats her head, saying she should have more outfits, dresses, shoes, shirts, the whole deal. A while later, they finally arrive at the library. There, Roland finds the book he was looking for, one about the properties of alloys. Seeing him reading, Zero looks a little confused, wondering since when did he get into studying. But it looks like Roland didn't find what he was looking for, so he puts the book back and decides to move on to the next destination. When Zero asks if he's done reading already, he just shrugs, claiming they should hurry and get her some clothes before the day is over. And so, they walk around, and Zero ends up checking out a ton of different dresses. Finally, Roland buys her a bunch of clothes, along with a burger and juice. Zero starts feeling a little concerned, seeing how much he's spending. But Roland remains nonchalant, assuring her there's nothing to worry about. He even offers her this new phone just so they both can stay in touch. Later, Roland wakes up in the real world after spending 2 straight days in the dream realm. He can still feel the lingering sensation of that natural force he absorbed back there. He has no idea what that thing was, but one thing's for sure. If it was some kind of natural power infused with magic, it shouldn't have been tangible. He also has yet to figure out who that sickly man was. There's no way in hell his brain could house such a massive dream realm. If it doesn't exist in his subconscious, then where the hell is all this happening? For now, he decides to push aside the mystery of the dream realm. He's got more important things to focus on. Thankfully, the dream realm allowed him to revisit a lot of knowledge he had forgotten. His memory is still fresh on the book about alloys he read in the library. If he utilizes this newly acquired knowledge, he can significantly cut down the time Anna and Lucia spend experimenting. If he's successful in producing the 3rd generation of machinery he's envisioning, he'll be able to craft even more sophisticated parts. In the coming days, Neverwinter City will have the chance to step into the gates of the Industrial Revolution, and the Western region will undergo a drastic transformation as they enter this new era. Later, the priest guy responsible for the construction side of things arrives with good news. Since I can't remember his name, let's just call him Cheeky Ass until we figure it out. Cheeky Ass gives the report that Road 67 has finished construction. Roland is glad to hear how they're getting much more efficient with these new projects compared to past ones that took twice as long to complete. Cheeky Ass has plans to assign the workers to new housing projects only if Roland doesn't have any more road projects. It'll cost a bit more, but Neverwinter City's neighborhoods are in dire need of expansion. Roland already knows this. Their new town has at least tripled in size in just 1 year, not including the farmland they've developed from the Redwater River. But Roland also mentions that the road projects aren't going to end anytime soon, and that he plans to build a steel road from the mines all the way to the port. Of course, Cheeky Ass hasn't heard of this steel road before, so Roland explains that, as the name suggests, it's literally a road made of steel rails. It's similar to the system used in the mines, but it's constructed entirely of steel. Cheeky Ass acknowledges this, and further asks how many workers are required to build it. Roland simply states that they need a lot of them. He doesn't want it to be as limited and basic as just some steam engine pushing carriages over tracks. He wants a proper transportation solution on a grand scale. He essentially wants to create a network of rail tracks for trains to support land transportation. This would be a huge leap for the transportation sector. It won't be easy, but constructing the railway that connects the northern mountains to the port will help develop their first generation of rail workers. The route will travel along the misty forest all the way to the second perimeter of the wall, so Roland decides to start with 200 workers to lay the foundation. But Cheeky Ass reminds him that the railway will be exposed to demon beasts, given the route they've chosen. Roland reminds him that the beasts wouldn't be interested in steel, and besides, he doesn't plan on finishing it before the month of demons. As for next year, he's confident they won't need to hide behind the shoddy mud wall anymore. Of course, Cheeky Ass has no clue what Roland is talking about. Roland points out that the border town is getting really cramped with all the people, and it's become difficult to rely on a thin wall to protect them from demons. So, he plans to expand along the western border. When the Divine War begins, the Devils might place troops at the ruins of Tequila, and if that happens, their scouting stations could extend all the way to the foot of the mountains. If they can turn the mountains into a wall, Roland is sure they'll be able to protect the kingdom. He also plans to build steel rails to places that don't have access to the rivers to make transportation easier through trains. Furthermore, Roland envisions building an architectural landmark at Neverwinter City. The mention of a landmark makes Cheeky Ass wonder if Roland is talking about something eye-catching, like a memorial or a clock tower. Roland confirms this, though he believes calling it a landmark would be more fitting. It won't be like any other construction project. Roland plans to build a residential building along the Redwater River behind the industrial district. He then hands over the blueprints for the project. It may be the grandest project they've ever undertaken. 15 stories for each building, with each story being 11 feet tall. That means the total height will be more than 50 meters. Cheeky Ass is so overwhelmed by the blueprints that he's sure these buildings will touch the sky. Roland reassures him that it's not going to be that dramatic. It's just a typical high-rise building. But in this primitive era, he's confident buildings of this height can serve as a landmark. It seems Cheeky Ass still doubts whether they can build buildings this tall. Roland assures him it's more than possible. Not to mention, this is far below the limit for reinforced concrete. He plans to personally oversee the project to ensure it happens. We then cut to the education department, where the witches are taking exams, and time is already up. Evelyn looks quite relieved that she managed to finish the exam on time. It seems she's finally caught up with everyone else academically. She suddenly notices that Anna isn't there, which isn't surprising. There are rumors that Anna is already on a different level from everyone else. Compared to Anna, the rest of the witches might as well be weak sauce. Suddenly, Evelyn gets hit by a crumpled piece of paper. She turns to see Candle, who grins mischievously as she is clearly pleased with herself after doing well on the exam. Nightingale, on the other hand, looks as worried as ever about her academic performance. She might not be the sharpest tool in the shed when it comes to studying, but no one can deny her skills. She's an admirable figure, capable of going toe-to-toe with Ash in battle. We also catch a glimpse of Maggie, who seems completely disappointed with how she did. 3 days pass and the exam results are finally here. To Evelyn's delight, she scores big this time, 113 points. She can barely contain her excitement, but then comes the shocker. Maggie has scored 117 points. Evelyn can hardly believe it. Given how Maggie was beating herself up over the test, no one expected her to do so well. Maggie, on the other hand, is feeling incredibly proud of herself. Sister Moon is just as surprised. In fact, she briefly wonders if Sister Scroll made a mistake while grading. After all, she had seen Maggie spending the entire exam sketching and doodling pictures of honey-glazed meat. Lily, however, isn't so sure that accusing someone like Scroll is the right thing to do. She's clearly dissatisfied with Moon's attitude, but Moon isn't ready to drop the matter. She suggests they investigate and get to the bottom of this. Lily, however, makes it clear that no one is sneaking into the office unless Nightingale and Roland return. Moon reassures her they aren't planning to steal any exam papers. They just need to take a peek at Scroll's gradebook. To do that, she suggests calling Summer. With her magic, she can conjure an illusion of when Scroll was grading Maggie's paper. Evelyn reminds them that Scroll usually works in the City Hall, so they can't exactly barge in there. But Moon points out that City Hall is a public place. They aren't sneaking into Roland's office or anything. Lily, however, is skeptical. The education department is on the second floor, and she's not sure if the bureaucrats there will just let them walk up. That's when Candle speaks up. She has a plan. She tells them to follow her. Later, they arrive at City Hall. To their surprise, Candle has brought Nana along. Nana, of course, is practically a local celebrity at this point because of her healing powers. Watching Nana casually negotiate and chat with the officials makes the others anxious. They knew she was famous, but they had no idea she was this famous. Eventually, they make it to the education department. Moon wastes no time, quickly instructing Summer to activate her illusion. But Summer hesitates and feels jittery. After all, only City Hall officers are supposed to be here. After some convincing, she finally casts her magic. The illusion reveals a hologram of Sister Scroll inspecting Maggie's answer sheet. And sure enough, all Maggie had done was doodle pictures of meat. Her actual score is only 17. The group collectively groans, realizing Maggie had tricked them all. Maggie, on the verge of tears, insists her score is supposed to be 117 and points at her paper. To understand what went wrong, they shift their attention back to Scroll's hologram. There, they see a man walk up to Scroll, whisper something in her ear, and then leave. Scroll also leaves her desk for a moment. Then, as if fate itself was playing a prank, a gust of wind blows in through the window, sweeping several papers off the desk. At that exact moment, Scroll's writing quill also gets caught in the wind, tumbling through the air, before landing right on Maggie's exam paper. And just like that, it accidentally scribbles an extra 1 in front of the 17, turning it into 117. The mystery is finally solved. Candle can't help but give Maggie a pat on the back for her incredible luck. Evelyn, meanwhile, feels like a complete clown. They went through such a thorough investigation, only to uncover something that could have been laughed off as a joke. Though it's peculiar that the exam sheet didn't seem directly related to the quill, the two objects created an interesting coincidence. It wasn't just those two items either. The wind from the door and the messenger's timing were crucial as well. If even one factor had been off, things wouldn't have turned out that way. This also reminds Evelyn of her mixing of alcohol. After her sudden epiphany, she runs to her room, grabs a glass of water, and creates a new drink. When she tastes it, she's surprised. It's a mixture of juice and milk, or maybe tea and honey. It's definitely a new flavor, and she confirms that it's not alcohol. Later, when Evelyn visits Roland, Nightingale notices something strange about Evelyn's inner core. She realizes that Evelyn's magic has evolved. Her core now looks like a gray sphere, but its shape isn't solid. Nightingale also notices that her magic capacity is decent, somewhere between Soraya and Maggie's level. Evelyn is here to show Roland the new drink she's created with her ability. Roland tries the first sample and is absolutely blown away by how rich and flavorful it is. Evelyn tells him to try the other one as well. After tasting it, Roland realizes that this second one is even better. The heat hits him like lava rushing into his mouth, followed by a strong fruity aroma that overwhelms his senses, while still retaining the richness of fermentation. This is absolutely mind-boggling stuff, and Roland feels like a dragon after drinking it. He quickly decides to name it Fire Dragon. Roland then asks if Evelyn can manufacture this drink regularly. Sadly, Evelyn responds that she can't replicate it, as her new ability is not consistent. Hearing this, Roland finally understands why Evelyn doesn't seem happy about her magic evolution. She has always felt that her magic was terrible, and now that it has finally evolved, it's unstable. Improving the support witch's abilities will still take time. Roland reassures her that there's no need to be upset about not being able to replicate it. After all, it's the unique and beautiful experiences that make memories unforgettable, and there will always be people who want that. Besides, in these hard war times, flavorful drinks like hers can greatly boost the morale of soldiers and strengthen their will to fight. Roland decides to create a dedicated storage space for her to work in. She can hone her new ability there, and he's confident that anyone who tries her concoctions will be mesmerized by them. He even has a name for the drinks, turbulent drinks for now. Evelyn feels truly happy to have her abilities recognized. She's always felt inadequate compared to the others, thinking that she wasn't contributing enough. In the next scene, Barov reports to Roland about the arrival of astronomers in Neverwinter City. It's been 3 days since they arrived, bringing their families, artisans, and apprentices, a total of 312 people. Barov has arranged for the 9 astronomers to stay at the Foreign Relations Building, while the others have been temporarily housed in guest residences. It seems Roland plans to throw a welcome feast tonight in the plaza for them. He wants all the citizens to know that another field of academic study has now come to Neverwinter. Barov suddenly grows anxious as he reports recent incidents in Longsong Fortress. Apparently, several problems have surfaced. Most notably, the district city hall there has shown signs of neglecting duties and accepting bribes. Additionally, Scroll has uncovered multiple cases of accounting fraud. Even 2 officials from Border Town were caught engaging in illegal activities. The reason Barov is so tense is that the convicted individuals were once his apprentices. However, Roland assures him that even if they had been his apprentices, Barov himself will not be held responsible for their crimes. That said, these 2 weren't actually Barov's direct apprentices. They were part of the second batch of students who graduated and joined the city hall after passing the entrance exams. They, along with the rest of their graduating class, had been sent to Longsong Fortress, and it hasn't even been a year since then. Those who committed crimes have been dealt with harshly, receiving severe punishments to deter others. Roland then decides to gather the entire city hall in the castle lobby tomorrow. He plans to hold a short meeting to emphasize responsibility and discipline. Once Barov is dismissed to carry out his duties, Roland reflects on his primary concern: the lack of government officials who remain loyal to the administration. Mismanagement is an unavoidable issue, but he had thought it would take at least a decade before corruption became a real problem. Instead, it took only a year for it to appear within his government. This recent incident, particularly involving officials with civilian backgrounds, has taught Roland an important lesson. From what he understands, commoners may be more prone to corruption when they attain power compared to aristocrats. While it's true that he could use Nightingale's and Scroll's abilities to weed them out, doing so might create further tensions against witches and potentially incite rebellion. One way or another, he needs to find a solution as soon as possible. Later, the chairman of the Astronomy Association, Miss San, meets with Roland. Without wasting any time, they immediately dive into discussing the sighting of the Red Moon. From what Roland knows, the story of the Red Moon began 1,000 years ago, back when Grey Castle did not exist, nor did the Wimbledon family. However, Miss San claims that there are no historical records dating back beyond 450 years. To this, Roland states that those records had been intentionally hidden. He reveals the true meaning of the Red Moon. It is the signal for the devils to begin their assault. Miss San is stunned by this revelation, and without hesitation, demands to know how Roland learned of such a thing. Roland explains that the truth lies with the Witch Empire and the Church. The creation of the 4 kingdoms, including Grey Castle, is tied to them. He also mentions that he has already encountered devils near the western borders. They are not mindless beasts. They have their own culture and armies, making them a formidable alien race. Miss San then asks about something referred to as the Smile of God. Unfortunately, even Roland has no concrete information about this. However, he is certain that they may uncover more after the end of the Divine War. After absorbing all the astonishing details Roland has shared, Miss San begins piecing together his thoughts. The Red Moon is not actually a sign of God's wrath or an omen of doomsday. This revelation directly contradicts everything the astronomers had been led to believe. Furthermore, the Red Moon has no connection to the Wimbledon family either. If all of this is true, then Roland's stance on witches finally makes complete sense. Since witches' powers do not originate from the devils, they are not humanity's enemies. This means that the rumors circulating in Grey Castle about witches being innocent were merely the tip of the truth. Miss San is forced to acknowledge Roland's cunning and cautious approach, like how he selectively disclosed information about witches while withholding the parts that could cause mass panic. Regardless, the old man is now fully prepared to listen to Roland and follow his orders accordingly. While the discussion about the Red Moon is crucial, Roland has another matter to discuss with Miss San. He pulls out a book and presents it to him. It is a book on geometry. Roland explains that he wants astronomers to use arithmetic to calculate shapes. With specific data points, it's possible to map out entire patterns, and the illustrations in the book are actually arithmetic expressions. These expressions will help them mark out complex shapes with greater precision. The more Misan delves into the book, the more overwhelmed he feels. The knowledge contained within its pages is simply unreal. He spends half an hour trying to grasp the contents. While he understands many aspects, there are still several areas that elude him. Some of the symbols and methods differ from what is taught in the royal academies, making it difficult to correlate the calculations. Although dissecting this new information is fascinating, it will take time before he can fully comprehend its applications. It's not surprising that Misan struggles to grasp the book's content. After all, he has never learned equations. If he truly wishes to understand it, he will need to study the prerequisite books first. And it's not just Misan. Roland wants all the astronomers and their apprentices to study these concepts as well. Furthermore, Roland reassures them not to stress too much about the red moon. The Astronomer Society will only become valuable in the war against the devils if they first master this knowledge. This book is merely an introduction, as there are far deeper worlds to explore. Not only will they be able to map out paths, but they will also be able to describe everything they see in the sky. Roland hopes that Misan will embrace this new knowledge, using it as a tool for exploration and discovery. It might be difficult, and obstacles are completely normal. However, all Roland wants is for them not to give up, and he has complete trust that Misan will be able to absorb this knowledge in time. We then transition to Yorko's residence. There, we find Yorko indulging in a free massage from 76, a woman he received as a gift. The man is living the dream. Not only is 76 exquisitely beautiful, but her features surpass those of the average woman, though, of course, she still can't compare to witches. Her lips are full and red. She has a balanced physique, not as chubby as aristocratic women, nor as thin as peasants. And when she stretches, her lightly toned muscles make her look incredibly alluring. Yorko's moment of bliss, however, is abruptly interrupted by Fox. Fox immediately takes notice of 76, but makes it clear that he doesn't want anyone overhearing their conversation. Eventually, she has to leave. Yorko, trying to ease the tension, assures Fox that she is merely a servant. There's nothing to worry about. But Fox reminds him of the current chaos engulfing the Kingdom of Dawn. Given the situation, staying cautious is in their best interest. Hearing this, Yorko questions why Fox is so wary of 76 when he fully approves of Denise. After all, Denise Payton is far more prestigious and comes from a strong background, so why is she not a cause for concern? Fox explains that Denise is always in the spotlight, meaning countless people have already investigated her. However, someone trained by the black market has no traceable history. Yorko insists that he has already figured out 76's background and offers to share what he knows. He then starts spinning a web of nonsense, but surprisingly, it's enough to convince Fox. Fox moves on, returning to the real reason for his visit. He presents a letter to Yorko. As Yorko reads it, his once relaxed demeanor shifts into utter horror. The letter is an official diplomatic message from Roland, demanding that the King of Dawn stop rounding up witches. Yorko points out that this is the capital city of the Dawn Kingdom, not Grey Castle's western region. But Fox makes it clear that Roland prioritizes the safety of witches over securing an alliance. If this letter reaches King Appin, Yorko fears that every relationship they've built with the aristocrats here will collapse. The noble families of Dawn will mock him, treating him like a fool. Roland himself will become the laughingstock of every banquet. Yorko fails to see how this empty threat from Roland benefits anyone. However, Fox believes that Roland isn't merely throwing his weight around. Timothy Wimbledon had also dismissed Roland as all talk and no bite, yet history has proven otherwise. Roland has never made a meaningless move, and the past serves as undeniable proof of that. Eventually, Yorko decides to deliver the message to the King of Dawn. In the next scene, Yorko meets Appin in his chambers. Skipping unnecessary formalities, Yorko delivers Roland's congratulations on Appin's coronation, expressing hope for continued friendship between their two kingdoms. But Appin was expecting more than just a few words of congratulations from the King of Grey Castle. Yorko quickly clarifies that the caravan carrying gifts is still en route. The letter was simply sent ahead as a priority message. Appin reflects on how, when Wimbledon III was crowned, his father sent a caravan of 200 men to Grey Castle, with 11 carriages filled with gifts. He is eager to see what kind of tribute he will receive from Roland. Moving on, Appin is more curious about what made this letter so urgent. Yorko finally reveals the real reason behind Roland's message. Roland demands that the Dawn Kingdom revoke its harsh policies against witches and grant them the same rights as free citizens. Otherwise, Grey Castle will not tolerate such behavior. After all, the church serves as the perfect example of what happens when oppression goes too far. Naturally, Appin's expression sours upon hearing this threat. He can't believe that Roland actually wrote such a thing and demands to read the letter himself. As he scans the letter, he only finds him in further disbelief. Grey Castle's attitude toward their alliance is far more hostile than he expected. Appin isn't ready to stomach how Roland considers them innocent. For Appin, it's the witches who destroyed the Moya family from within by invading the castle and massacring their soldiers. They even forced him to obey the church by threatening his father's life. If those witches hadn't poisoned his father, he would be the one sitting on the throne. Yorko tries to calm the angry king down. He argues that the witches under the church are not the same as the rest. The other witches are just regular people like everyone else. But poor Appin, traumatized through and through, isn't ready to believe it. Only he knows how terrifying and frightening these witches are. Even the stones of divine judgment can't stifle their devil magic. Appin isn't ready to stomach the fact that Roland is trying to ruin the relationship between both kingdoms just for some ridiculous witches. So Appin plans to write a letter to Roland and urge him not to be tempted by those lowlifes. Grey Castle may be powerful, but Roland should not forget who gave him that power. Without the support of the aristocrats, there's no way he would be able to send armies to Dawn. In the worst-case scenario, even if Roland ended up invading the Kingdom of Dawn just for the sake of saving measly witches, Appin is sure the people of this kingdom will resist until the very end. Furthermore, Grey Castle's aristocrats won't support him as they did when he attacked the church. With that said, he dismisses Yorko with a cold tone. Later, Otto meets Yorko, who has gotten the gist of the situation. It looks like Otto is also in favor of Roland, as the policies Appin has been enforcing against witches are very harsh. His constant sweeps and captures are creating unrest. Yorko suggests Otto try to convince Appin, but Otto already knows Appin won't listen. Once Appin starts talking about witches, he becomes an entirely different person, though Otto wishes he could be more like Roland in that aspect. Anyhow, he decides to find another chance to talk to Appin. Suddenly, 76 comes in and reports that the witch he had bought has returned. It's, of course, Emmy, who begins begging Yorko to help them because Annie and the others are in danger. Well, this zesty-ass bastard certainly doesn't want to help them after all. He doesn't want to get into trouble. Anyway, he tries to assure the crying girl to explain what happened first. She begins to explain that while she was out looking for food, she saw a lot of soldiers. She and her fellow witches had been using the orphanage as their hideout, but it got exposed, and a lot of guards surrounded the place. They also locked down the streets nearby. There were multiple squads of knights, and they were kicking down alleyways to look for more witches. Yorko then questions her if there were any other witches besides Annie. The girl admits there were, namely Hero and Blade. All three of them are currently stuck in the orphanage. Hero lost her legs, so Annie usually carries her around. And if they get captured, there will be no way out for them. Later, Yorko and Otto have another conversation. In order to help the witches escape, Otto decides to take help from Duke Quinn, as he is the current prime minister, and the patrol guards are under his command. But Yorko isn't sure if this will work. I guess it doesn't hurt to try. Besides, Duke Quinn is the father of Andrea, one of the witches, and Otto's friend. Dawn begins to creep over, and Yorko impatiently waits for Otto's arrival. But, speaking of the devil, Fox comes back along with the other three witches. Emmy is absolutely delighted to see her friends alive and reunites with them. Yorko then questions Fox about how he managed to get them out. Well, it's a long story. Their current worry is leaving this place immediately. Fox reveals that he has already prepared carriages, 5 in total. The first 2 are for wheat and fruit cargo, and the last 3 are for transporting the witches. Yorko will also have to travel with the witches, while Fox intends to stay behind, as they can't afford to lose important intel on Dawn. They have to follow Roland's plans at all costs, but Yorko reminds him that, as the ambassador, he can't leave. But Fox reveals this is precisely why he must leave. After all, there are rats involved who helped rescue these witches. Ever since he arrived in Dawn, he had been maintaining relationships with the local rats. When the rats tracked the 3 witches to rescue them, those witches were already surrounded by soldiers. This means the King of Dawn had already known where the witches were hiding for a while and stayed one step ahead of them. This is why it's dangerous for Yorko to stay in Radiant City, and leaving is the best option. Yorko then worries if Fox is captured. Well, getting captured is the last thing Fox has in mind. They can only capture people with names, and since he's hidden in the shadows, no one knows who Fox is. In their eyes, he doesn't even exist. And so, as the dawn begins to settle, Yorko departs in the 5 carriages. Once the night falls, they take refuge in the forest. The men escorting them are people provided by Fox, and they are indeed very reliable. Annie then, out of the blue, apologizes to Yorko for the trouble she caused that day. Though she may not be handing them over to the King of Dawn, she still can't fully trust him. But Emmy vouches for Yorko, claiming he's not a bad person. It looks like 76 is also accompanying them on this journey. She feels quite happy that they are all from Wolfheart. Annie admits that while they were not born in the same city, they indeed belong to Wolfheart. 76 then recalls how Wolfheart was forcefully merged with the church, which caused the native witches a lot of trouble. Seeing Hero's missing legs, she wonders if the church is responsible for her leg loss. Annie reveals they were cut off by the very people Hero was protecting. You see, when Wolfheart was going through its darkest times, Hero took it upon herself to save everyone around her. But those people only returned her gesture with hatred instead. If they wish to hear the story, Annie is ready to share, but she gives them a clear warning that it's an unsettling one. It all started years ago, when the church's armies forcibly made their way into Wolfheart City, catapulting corpses infected with the plague over the city walls. But because of her, the plague didn't spread, as she was able to transfer illnesses to other living things, such as rats, cats, dogs, and other livestock, which became the victims of that plague. Still, some humans got infected. So the citizens dug a huge pit in the slums, and everyone infected with the plague was gathered there. Hero transferred the plague to animals, which were tossed into the pit to burn. Slowly, people viewed her as the savior of Wolfheart and started calling her Hero. Hero saved many people, and Emmy and she were also cured because of her. But in the end, there were only so many animals around, while the church kept spreading more plague. And even when the Wolfheart citizens collected every animal around to burn in the pit, there simply weren't enough animals to cure everyone. As the war dragged on, a few of the stronger began using the weak to save themselves. So everyone lost their humanity and became selfish in order to protect themselves. Still, to this day, Hero is haunted by the memories of when she infected the living people with the plague with her own hands. At first, the people thrown into the pit were criminals and prisoners. Then it became the elderly injured soldiers and captured judgment soldiers. Hero didn't want to give in to infecting humans anymore, so everyone's attitude toward her changed. They locked her up in a cell and threatened her, but Hero still said no. In the end, the guard she once saved cut her legs off. She had worked so hard to heal everyone and stop the cries of pain, but they chose to ignore her own cries of despair. In the end, they started a fire in the cell. As fate would have it, the one who saved the legless Hero was a captive from the Judgment Army in prison. The church's soldiers helped Hero out of the cell, and with their help, she finally managed to escape. After the war, the surviving Judgment warriors even provided her with food and clothes for a while, until their army returned to Hermes, and they had to say goodbye to her. Since she was able to save thousands of citizens in Wolfheart City, she earned the title of Hero. This story gives Yorko a lot to think about. The sheer amount of pain these witches have gone through. If he were in their shoes, treated harshly, he too might have viewed everyone as his enemy and killed them all for revenge. Yorko then assures them that the hero's legs might be able to be healed. After all, there were over 300 witches in Grey Castle, so there's a possibility that one of them has the ability to regenerate amputated limbs, or even grow new ones. 76 questions how in the hell the King of Grey Castle managed to gather so many witches. Well, it's a long story, and Yorko doesn't want to bore them with the details. Instead, he gives them a brief explanation. An old friend of his was practically born to be a ruler. He saw through the church's schemes long ago. Not only can witches live like normal people in his territory, but he also spread the news to every corner of Grey Castle. As time passed, plenty of witches arrived and pledged their loyalty to him. Furthermore, in Neverwinter City, every witch is promised a suitable job. Emmy gets excited upon hearing this and asks what kind of jobs they can have. Yorko reveals that it all depends on one's ability. For example, witches who can use fire help smith metals, while those who can control wind operate windmills and other similar tasks. Since Roland plans on building a new capital city in the western region, he needs a lot of manpower. Even if their abilities aren't particularly useful, there will still be plenty of opportunities for them to work as normal laborers. Once again, Annie butts in, trying to convince Emmy not to fall for these lies. Yorko understands her concerns but assures her that she'll see the truth for herself once they get there. The next day arrives, and Yorko has made it to the Breeze Mountains of the Kingdom of Dawn. Given how much they've traveled, they should reach the northern region of Grey Castle after another day heading south. Suddenly, one of the escorts reports that they're being followed. This throws poor Yorko into an absolute frenzy. The escort reveals that there are knights 7 or 8 miles away. They can't see them from here, but they're approaching. The knights aren't moving very fast, but since Yorko's carriage is slower than before, they'll eventually catch up. The escort suggests abandoning the carriages and continuing on foot since there's a dense forest nearby where horses can't pass. If they move through the forest, the knights, who are all on horseback, won't be able to catch up. But if they continue on the carriage, the knights will get closer, and if they catch up, everyone will be as good as dead. Someone also has to stay behind with the abandoned carriage. In other words, someone has to make a sacrifice. Yorko isn't thrilled to hear this. But then, 76 volunteers to stay behind. While Yorko isn't happy about it, he doesn't have a choice. Before leaving, he turns to 76 for one last conversation, just worried about her well-being. 76 reminds him that she was trained for 5 years in combat by the auction house. She's fast on her feet, so there's nothing to worry about. By the way, that auction house is also called Black Money, so if the name comes up later, don't get confused. 76 then reveals her plan. She'll travel to a nearby village and blend in with the villagers, becoming practically unrecognizable. Once everything blows over, she'll rendezvous and meet them at the border. But Yorko isn't sure she'll make it out unscathed. The village she's talking about is 30 miles away. There's no way anyone who stays behind will reach it before the knights do. If she gets caught, the knights won't show her any mercy. Yorko even considers sacrificing himself instead. If he's caught, King Appin will probably just demand a huge ransom from Roland, but he wouldn't face execution. 76 snaps him out of his thoughts, telling him that this is her choice. Not to mention, black money drilled into her the courage to make sacrifices in situations like these. Initially, she thought she'd spend the rest of her life in black money, grinding her days away to appease her customers. But thanks to Yorko, she got to see the vastness of this world. She has no regrets. With that, she waves one last time, rides the carriage, and takes off. As dawn descends, she's eventually caught by the knights. There are about 35 of them. The captain of the platoon, Duke Logan, orders his knights to search the carriages. The soldiers immediately surround them and find 76 alone. They report back to Duke Logan, saying there's nothing in the carriage except this woman. Duke quickly realizes what's happening. Yorko, the ambassador of Grey Castle, intentionally left someone behind to buy time. So, he orders his knights to search for footprints. Since the others fled, they must have left tracks behind. As for this woman, Duke decides she'll have her limbs amputated before they begin interrogating her. But 76 comes clean, revealing that the others escaped into the forest and can't be far. With that said, she suddenly jumps onto one of the knights and snaps his neck, killing him on the spot. The more suckers tries to attack her, but she slaps the fuck out of them. She then further grabs the dagger off the ground and goes on town with those bastards, killing the hell out of them. This lady is one hell of a fighter. She is literally smashing these guys like numbers on an abacus. The surviving knights are in utter disbelief at the kind of monster they've stumbled upon. The knights on horseback try to attack her, but the lady literally grabs the horses by their legs, swings them like it's nothing, and crushes one poor guy under the horse's weight. The remaining survivors try to run away, but those poor souls also end up meeting their demise. By now, I have a suspicion that she is not a normal person, but rather a witch. Anyhow, during the night, she drags the dead soldiers and hides them under branches and dry leaves. After taking care of the bodies, she walks to the carriage and grabs a shiny ring embedded with a stone. After sliding it down into her cleavage, she decides to head to the village. From there, she will rendezvous at Grey Castle with a driver. She fears that Yorko might not wait for too long at the border, so she needs to hurry back. But she is sure that as long as she reaches the western region, she will be able to find the witches. As she gazes up at the starry sky, she reflects on how it has been 400 years, yet the night sky remains unchanged. Well, it seems like she is one of the witches of the Alliance who got separated from the witches of Comet City and refused to be part of the church. To understand who this lady actually is, we cut back to the past. There, we learn that she used to be that ominous heart we had seen before, and now she has possessed this body of 76. And these random hearts are actually witches in hibernation. Right now, the witch possessing 76's body has a mission. In order to fight the Divine War, these witches are searching for a candidate who can activate the Divine Retribution apparatus. This so-called Divine Retribution is currently unknown to us, but let's hope we find out soon. But 76 is certain that once she finds the Chosen One, the devils will be destroyed, and the glory of witches will return once again. 3 days later, we find ourselves at Duke Candle's residence. There, Yorko meets Duke Carlin. Yorko learns from Carlin that Roland has been deeply concerned about what is happening with the witches in the Dawn, and has already started planning an attack on the Kingdom of Dawn. Hearing this, Yorko finally realizes that what Fox said was true. Roland is quite serious about this matter. He decides to write a letter and inform him of their safety as soon as possible. Speaking of safety, he remembers 76, who willingly took the role of bait and endangered her life. He wonders what has happened to her, and as if summoned by thought, 76 arrives right outside Carlin's mansion. Yorko rushes out to see her. The lady appears injured, or rather, she has staged her injuries to avoid drawing suspicion. Yorko is on the brink of tears seeing her alive. He can tell she must have struggled a lot to survive. She spins a story about how she unmounted the horses and rode them to outrun the knights, but she soon found herself at the edge of a cliff, so with no other choice, she jumped. The knights assumed she was dead and didn't bother to investigate. Yorko apologizes for everything she had to go through. He decides to stay here for a few days until she recovers, and after that, they will begin their journey to town. The next scene takes us to Border Town. There, Roland welcomes his most esteemed friend, Margaret. The reason she's getting such an extravagant welcome with cannons is that her contributions have helped Border Town become what it is today. Without her help, the western region wouldn't have developed so fast. Margaret also feels honored to have a friend like Roland. It looks like she has brought a few of her merchant fellows, who are very interested in buying Roland's steamboats. Roland is happy to see these new buyers and looks forward to getting acquainted with them. In the guest hall, Roland is hosting a feast with the new merchants Margaret has brought. As they sit there, the merchants express their interest in buying steam engines. Not just engines. They're also very interested in purchasing the steamboats Roland sold to Crescent Cove. One merchant recalls how they were given a quotation of 1,800 royals for the remodeling of one boat. So, Sundown Island is willing to add another 200, making it 2,000 golden royals per boat, and they want 5 boats remodeled. He assures Roland that the Merchant Guild will pay half of the price up front. Hearing this, Roland reminds them that remodeling one boat might take 3 months, so 5 boats will require around a year. If they can wait that long, City Hall manager Barov can draft a contract soon. The merchant accepts the terms, though he has another request on behalf of Sundown Island. He wants Roland to hire workers from the bay for the remodeling. Just like the steam engine factory in Crescent Cove, they will provide him with a group of workers. And the boats they remodel will be exclusive to Sundown Island for 10 years. After that, they will be free to sail anywhere. Shallow City also wants a similar contract, and the order of 5 boats will be their first. Roland is hesitant about accepting this contract. It's a massive 10-year deal that would bring in around 10,000 golden royals annually. After the 10-year period, the merchants will also acquire the remodeling details. While Roland understands that there's nothing wrong with these principles, he wants to make some adjustments. For example, he wants the contract to last 5 years instead of 10. As long as Shallow City and Sundown Island keep the workers within the western region, he is willing to give a 20% discount on the price. The merchants begin weighing their options. They understand they can keep the workers in the region, but training them isn't easy, and that's a key factor. For now, the merchants decide to leave. They need to discuss these terms with the guild before giving a final answer. That's when one of the merchants, Gamora, steps up. While he is very interested in acquiring Roland's boats, it's not the wooden boats they want. Crescent Cove needs a massive steel ship, one that can power through storms, just like the one built for Thunder. Margaret feels anxious. She never told anyone about Thunder having this ship. She quickly assures Roland that she didn't reveal anything about the transaction between him and Thunder. Roland trusts her, but he still asks the merchant where he heard about this. Roland never considered keeping the steel ship design a secret, but as of now, only the ship's body has been completed, and it's being built on a private river shore, hidden from public view. The workers are also locals, carefully selected. If his workers have secretly contacted people from the bay, that's something he should take notice of. After all, he doesn't want merchants figuring out what he's working on next. Gamora further reveals that Thunder is currently recruiting a new team of explorers, larger than anything he has done before. And basically, the entire bay knows about this project. Crescent Cove has plenty of outstanding captains, so it's natural that some of them would be hired. As for the details about the incredible ship, they learned it from Lord Thunder himself. After all, he needs to show his strength if he's heading to Pahomo Island and the Western Seas. Roland then asks how many people know about this. Gamora reveals that there aren't many. If the Crescent Cove Guild didn't have so many skilled captains, Lord Thunder wouldn't have told them anything. Roland believes it's difficult to build another ship like this anytime soon, so he is not in a position to entertain this request. One of the merchants is totally fine with that. He is willing to buy a ship once Roland is done with Thunder's order. After that, the Crescent Cove Guild is willing to pay 25% up front, and once construction starts, they can immediately pay the remaining 75%. Roland is quite astonished by how bluntly these merchants discuss paying money up front before even knowing the price of the product. Finally, he responds, expressing gratitude for their trust in Neverwinter City. However, he explains that the city also requires many steel ships, and it may take up to 2 to 4 years before Neverwinter City produces enough ships for themselves, let alone producing for others. He then also proposes a solution. If the merchants are willing to send their own workers to assist in shipbuilding, it would not only speed up construction, but also allow Crescent Cove to acquire the necessary knowledge to build more ships in the future. Gamora initially takes this suggestion as a humble joke. If the steel ship's abilities are truly as impressive as Lord Thunder described, then Roland may become the Bay's most sought-after trading partner. The merchants do not wish to appear greedy by acquiring such a valuable trade secret. Roland, amused by their reaction, assures them that he is entirely serious. This shocks the merchants beyond belief. They struggle to confirm once again whether Roland is genuinely willing to share the secrets of shipbuilding with the Crescent Cove Merchant Guild. Roland nods affirmatively. As long as they can provide enough workers, such as blacksmiths, carpenters, or even apprentices, he is willing to cooperate. If they cannot provide the necessary 2,000 laborers, then they also have the option of training their citizens, with a 5-year period to accomplish this task. Gamora remains in disbelief, wondering why Roland would choose to share such a secret so freely. Perhaps Roland possesses an even more groundbreaking technique. Roland quickly dispels that notion. The steel ship he built for Thunder was developed using the most advanced methods Neverwinter has to offer. There are no further secrets to hide. Though Garmora struggles to wrap his head around the proposal, he does not press further and eventually agrees to the contract. The group celebrates with a toast, marking a successful deal that will benefit both parties. Afterward, several men bring out the drinks that Sister Evelyn has been producing lately. Roland introduces them as turbulent drinks. As the name suggests, these beverages are chaotic and unpredictable. Every bottle contains a unique and indistinguishable flavor. Roland confidently claims that none of the merchants present have ever tasted anything like this before. Sure enough, once the merchants take a sip, they are immediately transported into a state of pure bliss. They go so far as to claim that everything else they've tasted in comparison is nothing short of miserable. They also notice that the drink bubbles and fizzes as if alive, dancing within the glass. Roland reveals that he has added dry ice, making the drink carbonated. He is very curious about the potential market for such a product, and inquires whether there would be any demand for it. Garmora quickly affirms that there is. Since tastes vary from person to person, perhaps each of these drinks could appeal to different demographics. Though undoubtedly a luxury item, he wagers that once people experience such a sensation, they will refuse to settle for anything else. Roland hopes they are being honest. Garmora assures him that he would never dare to lie about something like this. However, they are uncertain about simply calling them turbulent drinks. Since each bottle has its own distinct flavor and quality, they could be marketed under different names which can be consumed on different occasions. Even Margaret suggests that selling these drinks under different names would be a better approach, as everyone has their own preferences. Unfortunately, Roland explains that these drinks are exactly as he described. Each one is a unique experience. In fact, the 3 drinks they just consumed were the last of their kind. They will never exist again. One of the merchants is shocked, asking whether it is truly impossible to manufacture more. Roland confirms this. This is precisely why he calls them turbulent drinks. As soon as a person finishes one, it becomes a lost treasure, something to be cherished. Although he cannot reveal the process behind making them, he assures the merchants that the drinks will always be different in flavor. If they have one thing in common, it is simply that they are all delicious. Garmora eagerly offers to manage the distribution of the product. He believes that the Crescent Cove crew, with its access to the shores of all 4 kingdoms, is best positioned to maximize profits. Other merchants quickly object, accusing Garmora of seizing an opportunity too quickly. After all, Crescent Cove has traditionally focused on trade with the Dawn region and has never engaged in commerce with the Western region. One merchant argues that Sunset Island has the highest traffic for ships traveling to Wolfheart and other major kingdoms, making it the ideal hub for distribution. As the merchants bicker over who should control the supply, Roland interjects with a proposal and suggests forming a merchant coalition. A coalition, he explains, would prevent unhealthy competition from artificially deflating prices. Each participating merchant could manage their respective regions, with Neverwinter City providing the exports. Since each merchant already has established trade routes and towns they are familiar with, this would allow them all to play to their strengths and ensure fast logistics while avoiding unnecessary conflicts. The final sales will be divided according to percentages set by initial contracts. This way, everyone can be insured. While this sounds good on paper, Garmora is not sure how they are going to decide the percentages and areas. Besides, selling the drinks in Neverwinter will be completely different from selling them at the Bay. Roland then reveals that logistics and profits are also considered factors. Labor prices and availability are variables that need to be discussed until everyone is satisfied. Margaret is willing to join right away, and the other merchants have no problem trying it out either. Roland further reminds them that working together is far better than working alone, ensuring a win-win situation for everyone. The scene transitions to Tilly on Slumber Island, where Camellia presents the basic statistics regarding the witches moving to the western region. Fortunately, nearly half of the witches have expressed their desire to join. While the number might seem significant, it is still far less than what Tilly had expected. Camellia points out that the only reason the witches are even remotely interested in visiting Border Town is because of the Fourth Prince. They all want to learn how he defeated the Church, their natural enemy. It is evident that Camellia is not fond of the idea of witches relocating there. After all, Roland is a mortal and very different from witches. She does not want them to follow him blindly. While she apologizes, acknowledging that her words may seem rude, she simply wants to state the obvious. She is not questioning Tilly's decision nor accusing her brother of deception, but she worries about the future. What if one day, Roland's desires conflict with the well-being of witches? What if he starts hunting them down just like the elites have done for generations? Tilly completely understands her concerns and assures her that this is not a decision made on a whim. Witches may be different from mortals, but under the looming threat of the divine war, they share the same objective: survival. She does not see any benefit in isolating themselves when they have an opportunity to integrate into the world. Why not join the mortals in forming a cohesive society with a shared goal? Once Witch's power spreads across every continent, it would not matter if Roland breaks his promise with Slumber Island. In fact, Roland and the mortals would become more reliant on the Witch's power, and would be nothing without it. Still, Camellia fears what might happen if he ever decides to rid himself of the witches under his command. Tilly reassures her not to be so pessimistic. From what she has observed over the past 6 months, Roland has not forcibly restricted anyone in any way. Otherwise, the Western Region's Witch Union would not continue to staunchly support him. Furthermore, she trusts her intuition more than mere precautions. And right now, her intuition tells her that Roland is harmless. Camellia finally exhales in relief, especially since Tilly's predictions have never been wrong. Understanding the situation, she promises to quickly finish preparations to transport the witches. Before leaving, Camellia brings up some troubling rumors related to the information she gathered from Bordertown. Apparently, some people believe that since an empire of witches once ruled over mortals, they can mirror that past alliance and create a society where witches are superior. Essentially, they seek to restore their ancestors' glory. Tilly questions which faction is behind this conspiracy, wondering if it is the Bloodfang witches. However, Camellia dismisses the notion, stating that the Bloodfang witches still pledge loyalty to strength. The fact that the Western region managed to defeat what once seemed like an invincible enemy, the Church, has convinced the Battle Witches of Bloodfang to be the first to sign up for Neverwinter. Not to mention, they were further encouraged to join since Softfeather, Evie, and Twilight also fought alongside Roland against the Church. Camellia reveals that the source of this conspiracy comes from another witch organization on Slumber Island. Given that Slumber Island has always been a large community of witches from various backgrounds, it houses more than just Bloodfang. There are also groups similar to the old association from Seabreeze Town. She wonders if Tilly wants her to speak with their leader. However, Tilly states that it is unnecessary. Those groups do not possess the power that Bloodfang has, so there is nothing to worry about. When they arrive in the Western region, they will quickly realize that the concept of a witch empire is nothing more than an outdated relic of the past. Brand new roads and completely unexpected adventures await them ahead. Later, Ash comes to meet Tilly. Since there is no one around to witness their affection, the two women passionately embrace. While Tilly appears happy and confident on the surface, deep down, she harbors many concerns. She has no doubt that Roland will treat the Slumber Island witches well, but she worries whether the 300 witches can successfully reintegrate into society after spending 2 years in isolation. And even if they do, will mortals truly change their perception of witches after the Divine War? The scene transitions to Neverwinter, where Roland stands by his window, gazing outside. He notices that it has yet to start snowing in Neverwinter, which only means that the months of demons will arrive later than expected this year. This is good news for the city, as it grants their construction teams more time to put together a few more residential buildings. Now that Neverwinter has secured a stable supply of food, weapons, and a well-functioning logistics network, they are well prepared for the inevitable battle against the demons. Suddenly, Ironaxe arrives at Roland's office, responding to his summons. Roland has called him to discuss the southernmost desert region, the very land where both Ironaxe and Sister Echo hail from. At the mention of the southern region, Ironaxe immediately realizes Roland's intention. He plans to conquer it, and he plans to do it this winter. Later, Nightingale visits Roland, expressing her concern over his decision to travel to the southernmost region at this time, especially with the months of demons approaching. However, Roland reassures her that he has already accounted for this. Based on last year's estimates, he is confident that 1,000 soldiers will be sufficient to defend the city wall, and to be cautious, he plans to leave 2,500 troops behind. Additionally, new recruits have already been enlisted, ensuring that Neverwinter's defenses remain strong. Shortly after, Barov arrives with the completed Merchant Coalition contract, which has already been signed. Upon reviewing the document, Roland sees that Grey Castle's domestic sales will be managed by Margaret, while trade in Everwinter and Wolfheart will be handled by Sunset Island and Shallow City. Crescent Island will take responsibility for the bay and surrounding islands, including Dawn. Roland is certain that as long as they adhere to the agreement, the coalition will be highly effective. Just then, Roland notices an unfamiliar equation written on one of the contract papers. Barov quickly explains that one of his apprentices had written it. Apparently, the apprentice discovered that using this equation made it much easier to organize and analyze a confusing set of data. Thanks to the intermediate classes Roland had established, Barov had introduced mathematics textbooks to all his apprentices and encouraged them to attend Scroll's lectures during their free time. Barov expresses regret that he is too old to fully dedicate himself to studying, lamenting that if he were 10 years younger, he would have immersed himself in learning every day. Roland, however, is pleased that his education system is proving effective. Moving on, Roland asks Barov if he has completed the population estimates for Neverwinter's future. Barov reports that, according to City Hall, out of 80,000 new citizens, half willingly migrated to Neverwinter. Including the populations of Bordertown and Longsong Fortress, Neverwinter now exceeds a total population of 110,000. Roland finds it interesting that so many people immigrated willingly. The way things are progressing, he suspects that any remaining rebels who still support Timothy's ideals will soon find themselves in trouble. Barov then mentions that while everything is proceeding smoothly, Iris's performance has been disappointing. Although she has successfully won over the merchants with her looks, she lacks business experience. However, Nightingale quickly calls out Barov's bias, recognizing that he is deliberately downplaying Iris's abilities. So, Roland responds accordingly, instructing the old man to provide as much assistance he can if she is doing something wrong. Barov stumbles over his words, trying to justify himself, but Roland dismisses him, reminding him to focus on winter preparations and to ensure Scroll continues classes throughout the season. Roland then outlines his plan. While maintaining Neverwinter's winter operations, they will launch a small war, targeting the southernmost region. Once Iron Axe drafts a detailed strategy, Barov will collaborate with him to manage supply routes. After Barov leaves, Nightingale reappears, questioning whether Roland intends to do anything about the growing tension between Barov and Iris. However, Roland believes reprimanding Barov outright would only cause him to completely stop challenging Iris. To maintain a balance within City Hall, Roland thinks it's necessary to have someone capable of keeping Iris's influence in check. At the moment, Barov is the only person who can fulfill that role. Still, Nightingale remains curious about Barov's resistance. If Iris is capable of managing City Hall effectively, wouldn't that be a win for everyone? Her question makes Roland pause, and he begins to reflect on his own reasoning. Am I worried that she would gain too much power? He wonders to himself. It's not that he fears she would turn against him, especially while she remains in Neverwinter, but maintaining a balance of power is crucial. He believes it is the only way to prevent corruption. However, he also despises the idea of suppressing others, a practice that was all too common in his old world, where those in power often held others down for personal gain. Despite these conflicting thoughts, he feels he has no choice but to prevent anyone from rising too high. His internal dilemma is interrupted when Nightingale suddenly points out the window, drawing his attention to the falling snow. The first snowfall of the season has arrived. The months of demons are upon them. We then cut to the Holy City, where we meet one of the archbishops. Since his name has been forgotten, let's call him Holy Baboon. Holy Baboon is frustrated at the thought that the Divine Punishment Army, which was the church's ace, has been completely wiped out. Furthermore, Zero tricked them all to seize the Pope's position for herself, and now she too has gone missing. As his mind races with countless troubling thoughts, dreading the unfortunate events that are to follow, soldiers suddenly rush in to warn him. The secret temple is under attack, and he must leave immediately. Holy Baboon is in disbelief. How could anyone possibly invade this sacred place like this? One of the soldiers clarifies that the enemy appeared from deep within the caves. Eventually, the old man follows the soldiers escorting him toward the passage leading to the old holy city. But once outside, he is met with a terrifying sight where the enemy soldiers are already waiting for him. These soldiers appear to be divine punishment warriors, but something is wrong. They seem to have been hijacked by the same witches who had the form of hearts. Without hesitation, they execute the archbishop on the spot. With their path now clear, one of the warriors decides to venture further inside to complete their objective. However, a blonde soldier reminds him of the injury he sustained. If they don't stop the bleeding, there is a possibility they could lose control over the body. One of them begins patching up the wounded soldier, Carol. Another member of the group reminds them that their comrades are still waiting at the top of Tequila, so they need to focus and not lose sight of their mission. With that said, they resume their search for the relic. After navigating through the castle, they finally reach the prayer room that Pasha had mentioned. One of them quickly notices something unusual. He slams his hammer against a wall and it ruptures, revealing an empty space behind it. Once they break through the wall, they discover a massive crimson jewel. According to them, this object is what once decided humanity's fate. Before the eager hammer-wielding soldier can lay his hands on it, his companion Zoe reminds him of the strict guidelines they must follow. First, they must never lose focus while moving the relic. Secondly, they must refrain from connecting to God. There is also a third precaution that Pasha warned them about. As soon as they place their hands on the stone, they realize that it is trying to connect with them. The stone suddenly begins to speak, offering them comfort, happiness, pain, warmth, and cold, everything they could possibly desire. All they have to do is relax their thoughts and gaze upon it. Zoe, entranced by the crystal's smooth words, falls into its trap. In an instant, she is absorbed into the jewel. The crystal assures the others that there is nothing to worry about. She has simply surrendered to her desires. But her companion refuses to accept this and demands that the stone release her at once. The crystal, however, refuses, challenging them to enter and take her back. Left with no other choice, the hammer guy focuses on the crystal, and she too is transported inside. Within the jewel, she finds herself surrounded by the same 3 paintings we once saw Zero speak of. She calls out for Zoe, but there is no response. As she approaches the eerie throne of skulls and blades, the knight seated atop it suddenly extends his hand toward her. As she steps backward, the sinister eye behind her strikes, wrapping its tentacle around her throat and beginning to strangle her. At that moment, she catches a glimpse through the frame. Zoe is dragging the hammer guy's body away from the stone. In the next instant, the witch stuck inside the jewel finds herself back in the hammer guy's body. It turns out that Zoe and Betty were never the ones absorbed by the jewel. Instead, the hammer-wielding soldier had fallen victim to it. The crystal had deceived him, using illusions to lure him inside. Zoe is furious that he made eye contact with the stone and got swallowed. However, the soldier is convinced that what he saw was more than just mere illusions. Regardless, they must refocus on their task. They need to transfer the relic into the divine stone chest as soon as possible. Otherwise, every demon in the vicinity will be drawn to this place. We then transition to Yorko's ship, sailing toward Border Town. Emmy is excited, seeing snow for the first time. The sight of snow reminds 76 of her life in Tequila. That place always had the most snowfall. Because of this, the devils would slow their attacks during winter. At that moment, Blade appears, scolding Emmy for disturbing 76 while she is resting. However, 76 assures her that she will recover soon enough and will be able to enjoy the snow herself. She remarks that Roland's city lies even farther west than here, meaning they will see even more breathtaking snowy landscapes. Blade then decides to reapply the ointment to 76's wounds and suggests that she close her eyes. Once the medicine is applied, they let 76 rest again. Yorko suddenly enters and is immediately hit by the stench of the ointment. He and 76 talk briefly about Roland and Neverwinter, and in this entire back and forth, he assures her that everything will be fine once they reach the city. After their short conversation, Yorko leaves the room. While she is intrigued by his words, 76 believes that true safety will only come once she finds the Chosen One. If they cannot stop the devils, then no one will survive. In the face of the divine war, which will decide the fate of the world, there is no escape. After their long journey, they finally reach the shore, arriving in Neverwinter City. Emmy is thrilled, and as they peek out from the ship, they spot several witches waiting on the dock to welcome them. Annie is relieved to see that the ambassador had not been lying after all. Still, she wants to remain cautious, warning Blade and Emmy to stay alert at all times and to follow her gestures and gaze. Finally, Wendy, Nightingale, and Sister Leaf board the ship, welcoming them all to Neverwinter City. Wendy introduces herself as the manager of the Witch Union and warmly invites them to ask any questions they may have. In the background, 76 takes notice of how unnervingly friendly and welcoming these witches are. They haven't even bothered to ask about their abilities. Even in Tequila, where witches were dominant, newcomers weren't welcomed so freely, not even if they were transcendents. Then, 76 feels a gaze on her and notices Nightingale staring at her intently, which unsettles her. It feels as though she is being interrogated without words. Out of curiosity, Annie wonders aloud why they haven't asked about their abilities yet, as it seems unusual compared to any other witch organization. Wendy explains that they usually conduct an ability test 3 days after arrival. Since everyone must be exhausted from the trip, it's only fair they receive some well-deserved rest first. Annie then questions what would happen if their abilities turned out to have no utility. Wendy reassures her that no ability is useless. At least, that is what both Majesty Roland and the Witch Union firmly believe. The ability test isn't conducted to determine their worth, but rather to better understand each individual witch. Regardless of the results, no one is forced to join the Witch Union. Even if they choose not to work for Roland, every witch is free to live like a normal citizen. While the Witch Union does not pressure anyone into signing a contract, joining comes with significant benefits, and the work is relatively easy. This is why most witches choose to join right away. Hearing all of this, 76 falls into deep thought. If this place truly allows witches to lead normal lives, then it meets the conditions necessary to birth high-tier witches. The Chosen One may not exist yet, but there is possibility that the Chosen One might appear in the future. Blade then steps forward with her own question, wanting to know the nature of the work they would have to perform. First of all, Wendy insists that Blade drop the honorifics, and then explains that assignments are based on individual abilities. For example, Miss Evelyn, who can enchant wine, has established a brewery in the city. Miss Moon, with her magnetizing ability, is responsible for providing energy to their factories. And Miss Nana, whose outstanding healing abilities have earned her the title of the Angel of Neverwinter, tends to the injured. Hearing about healing abilities, Emmy suddenly perks up and asks if it would be possible to restore Hero's legs. While Wendy isn't certain, she suggests they ask Nana directly. Next, it is Nightingale's turn to conduct introductions and background checks on each witch. 76 quickly realizes that Nightingale is exuding magic, which does not surprise her. A large witch organization is bound to have individuals capable of discerning truth from lies. However, 76 is confident that since Nightingale cannot connect directly to her mind, she won't be able to distinguish between truths and carefully crafted fabrications. Nightingale begins her introductions with Emmy and proceeds with the rest. Finally, it is 76's turn. Since 76 is injured, Emmy speaks on her behalf, explaining that she is their friend and that if not for her efforts in diverting the Dawn soldiers who were chasing them, they would all be in prison right now. 76 introduces herself as a guide for the underground auction in Dawn, claiming that the ambassador bought her freedom from the auction house. At that moment, Sister Leaf steps forward, noticing the ring hanging around 76's neck. She asks about it. 76 casually claims she stole it from the auction house. After taking it off, she hands it to Sister Leaf, who examines the ring carefully. Meanwhile, 76 struggles to maintain her composure, realizing that she has underestimated these witches. Sister Leaf identifies the ring as a magic stone and questions why black money would possess such an item. 76 then reveals that there is an organization operating behind the underground auctions. They frequently deal in ancient artifacts retrieved from long-forgotten ruins. Her former boss often mentioned that these relics held immense power. After all, the most intriguing goods are always the most coveted among the auction house's clients. In addition to selling artifacts, the auction house also trafficked witches. Emmy confirms this, revealing that she herself had been auctioned off before the ambassador saved her. Hearing this, Nightingale assures Emmy that those responsible will get what they deserve. 76 then requests her ring back, and Sister Leaf promptly returns it. With that, Sister Leaf decides it's time to head back to the castle, where they can discuss the rest of these juicy details. She is certain that Miss Agatha will be particularly interested in this ring. The name Agatha rings a familiar bell for 76, but she keeps her suspicions to herself. Soon enough, 76 is placed on a stretcher and escorted to the castle. As they move through the city, 76 takes note of how, despite the arrival of winter and the start of the months of demons, daily life in Neverwinter appears to be unaffected. Emmy and Blade, meanwhile, are awestruck by the ships docked at the port. They lack oars, and even more bizarrely, they appear to be made of stone. Upon arriving at the castle, Wendy introduces Hero to Nana, the healer known for her ability to heal any wound, fresh or old. When asked about amputations, Nana agrees to attempt regrowing Hero's legs. However, after trying, nothing happens. Nana apologizes, explaining that her ability won't work unless they still have Hero's severed legs. Emmy, bewildered, rhetorically asks if Nana is seriously suggesting they retrieve the lost limbs. Anna confirms this and further clarifies that even a pair of freshly severed legs would suffice. Of course, Nana's blunt and morbid response spooks the hell out of Wendy and Emmy. Meanwhile, Nana remains indifferent, as she's merely stating what needs to be done. You see, Nana has already conducted many experiments for Roland on the topic of amputation. For example, she once swapped the wings of an eagle and a chicken just to see if the chicken could achieve flight. She's also done similar experiments with frogs and mice, cows and sheep as well. She's more than willing to perform a live amputation if they're interested in seeing a demonstration. Of course, Annie and the others are completely spooked at the mere mention of it, so they decide to pass. 76, on the other hand, seems to be really happy seeing how lively things are around here. It's now no wonder that the king is willing to accept witches. Judging from this, she's sure that he definitely doesn't seem like some old-fashioned, typically stubborn ruler. Out of curiosity, 76 then asks Nana about the success rate of her experiments. Nana casually reveals that a lot of the experiments failed, but once Roland included Lily in the process, the success rate improved drastically. That being said, the new limbs had pretty much no function. They had to reconnect them to their original owners. While these are all cross-species examples, Nana assures them that if they can provide her with human legs, they will be fully functional once attached to Hero's body. So all Nana wants is a pair of human legs. Wendy quickly places a hand over innocent Nana's face before she can say anything else, not wanting to scare the witches even more than they already are. She reassures them that it might take some time, but she promises that Hero will be able to stand up one day. It's honestly impressive how much Nana has grown since her early days. Back then, she used to be scared just seeing an injured chicken. But now, she can casually talk about morbid subjects all day while looking as cute as ever. Anyhow, Wendy insists that Nana focus on fixing their new friend. Nana quickly gets to work and heals 76's legs right away. She takes note of how strong-willed 76 seems to be. Normally, people just fall into a deep sleep after recovering from an injury as brutal as this. But 76 is actually the first person who hasn't even yawned. Suddenly, Emmy catches Wendy's attention and makes a shocking request. She wants Nana to take her legs and use them to heal Hero. Emmy reveals that her abilities allow her to heal herself. So even if both her legs were amputated, they would just grow back. Hiro is of course against this idea. They don't even know the full extent of Emmy's powers. In the past, Emmy has only ever suffered light wounds, so there's no way to be sure if this will even work. Annie is also against it. But that's when our little angel Nana suggests that they stop arguing, because there's another method to heal Hiro's legs. She reveals that she's already 16, meaning she only has 2 years left before she reaches maturity. Normally, magic abilities grow much stronger after a witch's maturity, so she's confident that she might be able to regrow Hiro's legs entirely. Not to mention there's also evolution. If she can evolve the way Miss Anna and Miss Leaf did, Nana is sure she can probably grow 4 legs if she really wants to. Of course, Emmy has no idea what this evolution ability is, so Nana explains further. It's when magic accumulates in the body and develops into a new form. As long as someone studies hard enough, they can evolve as well. Meanwhile, 76, who has been listening intently this whole time, starts wondering if Nana is actually talking about high-tier awakening. It's pretty weird for 76 to hear Nana make it sound like evolving is as easy as a walk in the park. Either way, one thing is for sure, this place has a large witch organization. Perhaps the chosen one she's looking for is really here. It's nighttime now, and we cut to Nightingale. She sneaks right outside the room where 76 is staying. During questioning, Nightingale didn't observe anything strange about the new witches. The 4 of them have very stable magic, and their capacities aren't surprising either. They're very typical, so they likely don't pose any significant threat. As for their answers, they didn't really lie either. Except for 76. Nightingale finds this woman to be incredibly suspicious. She has no trace of magic, and her composure is the same as any ordinary mortal. But Nightingale still feels like something is off about her, so she decides to confirm it once again. After sneaking into the room, she notices that 76 is still wide awake. And oddly enough, she's just playing around with her ring. Nightingale can see a tiny trace of magic, but nothing really special. Half an hour passes, and eventually, 76 goes to sleep. This leads Nightingale to believe she was just playing around with the ring normally, but it turns out 76 was 2 steps ahead. Her ring was able to detect the presence of another magic user, allowing her to trick Nightingale. Even so, she's now left wondering about Nightingale's abilities. This is definitely something she hasn't seen before. You see, the amount of ki surrounding Nightingale rivals that of the top-tier witches in the Alliance. 76 is only growing more and more curious about Nightingale's abilities. Anyhow, she's glad that everything is going as she intended. As she stands by the window, her ring begins to react to the overwhelming presence of ki nearby. When she looks outside, she notices the amount of ki is so massive that it's literally engulfing the entire area surrounding the castle. This is some next-level stuff, and for a moment she begins to wonder if this is the smile of God. By now she's sure that the chosen one she's looking for is definitely here. I wouldn't be surprised if this ki surrounding the castle is from Roland. After all, he has everyone in his head devoured by Zero, along with Zero herself. We then cut to Roland, who just woke up in the dream realm. They're brushing their teeth and having a little fun teasing each other. Apparently, today is parent-teacher meeting day, and Roland will be acting as Zero's guardian. Zero wants him to shave his beard, or else he'll look like a crusty old man, and she doesn't want to be embarrassed. He teases her back, suggesting that she put her hair in double ponytails so she can look like a normal kid. This, of course, sets her temper boiling, and she kicks him out of the dressing room. A while later, Zero is finally ready to head out, and surprisingly, she makes sure to have double ponytails in the end. Quite surprising nonetheless. Later, as Roland waits in the classroom with the other parents, waiting for the teacher to arrive, he notices Garcia. Roland finds this unbelievable, especially since Garcia never had any children in real life. For a moment, he wonders if maybe she did have a child, and that her child was consumed by Zero during the Battle of Eternal Winter. Either way, he points out that he's here as a parent too. Curious, Roland finally asks her if she has a child. Garcia quickly clarifies that she has a cousin. Roland notices that she isn't as grumpy toward him as she was when they first crossed paths. Finally, the teacher arrives to start the conference. Since the conference has started and they can't speak out loud, Garcia passes a written note, asking if Roland is the mysterious martial artist who was running on the street a while ago. Roland remembers the encounter he had with that zombie-like guy and asks her how she knew he was there, to which she claims that she was able to sense his body language because of the natural power he had. So she questions him if he just awakened his natural power or if he's been hiding it intentionally. Roland finally understands why she's softened toward him. Anyway, he sees this opportunity as a chance to learn more about this natural power, so he asks her what natural power even is. Of course, Garcia feels mocked, as she can tell that he's deliberately acting dumb. They go back and forth, and Roland still doesn't grasp the origin of this power. So Garcia decides to find somewhere to discuss this further. Roland doesn't waste this opportunity, and after a while, he visits her apartment. As soon as he steps inside, he's awestruck by how lavish her place looks. As they sit down, Roland asks if she lives here alone or with her cousin, to which she responds that she's not very close to her cousin. Not to mention, her cousin's entire Sanya family could be considered her enemies. It's all related to the demolition of this area. The Sanya family wants to demolish this building, and they're using her cousin to convince her to leave. But if she leaves, the company will be able to break everything down. She's curious as to why Roland isn't aware of this widely spread common information. Roland finds himself in a tight spot. He seems to have forgotten that he's not dealing with someone like Zero. Garcia, being the third princess, is much smarter and more perceptive, so talking to her is quite dangerous. So he meticulously argues that he hasn't really kept up with the local gossip. He lost his job a while ago, so he's barely stepped outside his apartment in recent months. Speaking of jobs, he questions her if there are any other jobs available for natural power users other than competing. She admits there are. Competing is a way to hone one's abilities. The prize money isn't the most important part. Their primary duty is to protect against the invasion of the outer realm. There's a threat widely known as the Fallen, and they're the most common type. They aren't people who've lost control of their natural power, but instead, they become affected by the outer realm and transform into an entirely different organism. Regular martial artists can barely damage the Fallen, so they have to stand up and fight them. Roland then questions her about what the outer realm is. Garcia claims that she can't omit any more details unless he joins the Martial Arts Association and acquires a hunting license. Because not everyone who's awakened their natural power stands by the association. Some even join the Fallen. Roland is spooked to hear this. What he understands is that if he confirms he's awakened his natural power and refuses to join the association, he's sure he might be marked as an enemy. Suddenly her phone rings, and she leaves him there to take the call. As she's out, Roland decides to seize this opportunity. He quickly enters her storage room and finds the same kind of secret door he has in his apartment. Since it seems Garcia hasn't opened it yet, he takes the chance. Once he opens the door, he finds himself staring at the magnificence of Shipport.